Hello, everyone. Good evening, good day, welcome,
Hello.
good afternoon. It's a cozy stream. It's a Sunday, and we're here. How is everyone?
Yeah, well, good to see you, man. How you doing? You well?
Good, 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 good. Very good, very good. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and welcome everyone outside there. Welcome to our chat. I can already see Sammy's out there. Good to see you, Sammy. And welcome
Hello.
everyone to the Social Pillar, our ongoing conversation about the value of role-playing games and their crafts, cultures, and communities in our world. But no, today is not a normal session. We're going to be having a workshop, the second of our cozy workshops. And it's going to be led by Jared today. It's very much about our map making skills, and might talk a little bit about that. Some of you get very excited about this. I know I do. I'm in the back seat today just to let Jared just take charge and go to town with whatever you want to design. So, Jared, why is it you want to talk about maps, and how are they important to you in
Mm.
role playing games?
Well, I mean, I think having run, Redbox Basic D yesterday, a good friend of mine just sort of taking our experience back into time. It is a basic necessity of some, but not all, role-playing games, especially when combat breaks out. It's nice to have a visual medium to,
Mm,
facilitate all of these measurements and all of these sort of positioning and everything, as well as to enhance, the imaginative story that we're telling. So a visual medium, whether that be through just drawing character art for all your play characters or having your NPCs, if that's something that people want to do. But there's also
mhm.
so many amazing tools these days where you don't have to be particularly artistic necessarily to have something functional. So they both serve
Yeah.
a functional and form function and form when it comes to role playing games. And they are a lot of fun to make for someone like me who's dabbled in graphic design as well. So I understand those
Yeah.
creative things like color and tone and texture and all of those things. And as an example, I've chucked up a map that I made in the past, a labor of love, that has got somewhat crazy amounts of detail in it in some areas, and sometimes you have to pick and choose what you do. But at the end of the day, they serve a purpose in terms of just helping guide people, but also can be informational. As we've discussed, you can
Mm.
give a handout to people that just sort of is, I guess, immersive in a way for the players.
Yeah, completely. I was thinking about how much we love maps. I mean, but the idea of having visual aids like maps that can be as detailed as this so that people, your players, having a chance to immerse in the world, get to understand where different places are in relation to each other, what the geography is like, what kind of beings are in those areas, or politics, like countries or whatever, or creatures may live in that region. But then you've got the kind of that's the macro scale, and you can have the micro as well of a battle map of something like the one that you've got here, which looks like it's perfect for people, either their miniatures or their characters, to go through and investigate slowly and actually find out more about the world that they're investigating or the encounter that they're getting involved in. So there's many different kinds of maps, which is what is fun. I know I love making maps. How much do you like making maps, Jared? And how much can you get stuck into it?
I will sink an entire evening into it because at the end of the day, it is very, very enjoyable for me to just make a map, whether it has a purpose or not.
Mm,
It allows me to kind of, again, like as a creative, like as a storyteller, sometimes words can only do so much. So if I have like a really cool idea of something, I won't just write it down as like a description or something. I'll definitely want to um, put that down on paper, and then also just as
mm,
these amazing tools that we have, there's really cool software and things like that these days that allow us to quickly throw something down, and it's not just a sketch with a whiteboard marker or something. You
mm.
do end up with effectively, here I am, I'm back, hello everyone.
Yeah.
You do end up with getting the idea down onto the page or the screen, and there's definitely been times where I will during that process learn different techniques, and there's really cool forums and Reddit
Yeah.
and stuff with these established applications. The ones that I primarily use are Dungeon Draft, and a new one that I'm using, which is more of a 3D environment, which is Dungeon
Mhm.
Alchemist. And that's still early days. They're constantly bringing content, but Dungeon Draft has been around for a while.
Mm,
And there's lots of insane things you can really do with it, from the layering to the lighting, to you know, taking one sort of plank of wood, strapping that onto the side of a tube, and then another one on the other side, and maybe another little sparky thing, and you've kind of got a cannon that you've
Hmm.
made. So you can get really in depth and detailed from the level of grunge and all of the things. But if that's fun
Mm.
for you, go ahead and do that. I'll just use an
Mm.
example here with the I think we're doing better on the rendering now. It might be a little bit laggy
Yeah,
still, but
it's looking good.
down
It's looking pretty good from
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, so from this here, just as an example, this is many, many layers of different objects. From the net that's over the top is one object, the colored tape underneath, which is meant to be sort of markings on the floor, is
Yeah.
a path tool. Someone's created a pathing tool, which is part of the things I'll go through in Dungeon Draft. And then each of
Hmm.
those crates is its own object. And then
Hmm.
underneath that, I've got shadow, just circles of shadow that I'll layer on to create darkness and depth and things like that. So everything
Mm.
starts quite flat, and then you can build it up from there. And again,
You
different
got power
textures. So
loaders. Sorry, I
yep,
had to
yep.
point out you got power loaders. That's fantastic. Awesome.
So yeah, and then there's obviously like having all of these assets. Now I pay these creators on Patreon
Hmm.
to get all of these assets and things like that. And there's lots of sci-fi ones, as you can see here, from metal tubing and wiring to consoles with amazing screens and sort of
Mm.
glass containers that hold various interesting things and med bays and sci-fi looking stuff. But you can absolutely make anything you want as long as you have the right mentality and the right approach to it all. Um, but there's nuance
Yeah.
and then there's function. So we'll talk on both in terms of what this served a purpose as basically a dungeon crawl. Players landed on the ship, came in through the hangar deck, and had to explore their way through subtle clues as to where each thing goes. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, like they're just going to crawl through, do what they want to do. But I think
Mm.
we start from scratch and we make a more traditional dungeon for the purposes of
Yeah.
demonstrating.
I think that's
Mm.
a really good idea. And just to welcome out in our chat as well, kick off, go welcome. Good to see you.
Hello,
And
everyone.
everyone else in the chat, if you guys have got questions as we go, Jared's going to put together a bit of a map from scratch. And so we're going to be here just as witnesses to what's going on, have a chance to have a look at your process, particularly, Jared, about how you go about it.
Mm.
And as you get that prepared, what kind of map are you thinking of drawing? Actually, this is a good point. What kind of map are you thinking of going ahead with?
Well, let's. I think we've also talked on creative restrictions before. So my first sort of thing is like, how big do I want this to be? Because if I make it too big, I'm gonna like I have to fill the space. And if I make it too small, I won't have enough space to put all my insane ideas. So I like a sort of 30 by 30 tile, and that's again
Mm-hmm.
going off a traditional 5 foot grid or any grid based map that you would use.
Mm-hmm.
This, for example, this Alien roleplay one, Alien doesn't really use specific measurements, it uses areas. So are you in the immediate area or a nearby area kind of a thing? And that immediately comes out into the way that you play it. So I thought of this map through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm just gonna sort of make a 30 by 30, and I've
Mm-hmm.
loaded all my assets ahead of time. So now we have a nice traditional blank textured surface.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're
I
going
am on.
fantasy as opposed to alien. Is that right for this
Yeah,
one?
let's go fantasy. I am noticing that we are
Okay.
dropping so many frames though, which is really frustrating. Um, I might stop recording, see what happens there, see if that helps.
Mhm.
Because I think it's an encoding issue where we just seem to be not actually pulling the frames initially.
Okay. Awesome. We're going to get a frame rate up if we can, see how it is. I guess one of the things to think about too is, as I was saying to everyone out there on the chat, the different kinds of maps that you can have. So this one's going to be much more of, it looks like we're going to try and aim for a battle map, which is very much more interactive for players. And it can also be very handy for the GM just to keep a track of where everything is too. And just being a lot of fun to put together, I think, as well. So what was the influence? It was the influence. Do you want to go with the influence of what you were saying, the red box?
Yeah. So ran the red box yesterday, which includes a really nice solo adventure that seems to be sort of lacking. It seems to have been created for the purposes of educating the player on how to play Dungeons and Dragons. It takes you into rooms with different creatures and you interact with them. And there's even a puzzle. So I would love to just kind of take it back to our roots. Like if I wanted to teach someone a role playing game and I wanted to go
Mm,
into a classic 5 room dungeon, and again, I think we should just reaffirm that when we say dungeon, we do mean an area that is yet to be explored, whether that was the sci-fi ship that I had, or if it's the
yeah.
catacombs of a castle, or whatever it might be. It might even just be a cave system.
Mm,
And there's no reason you can't mix and match those. But what would be a cool, I don't know, we could say like a little bit of a cave system that leads into some
mm,
sunken ruins, and then in those ruins is what the players seek, whether that be someone who's been kidnapped or something that they're looking for, a particular magic item that is a fetch quest, or they don't know what's in there. Maybe they're just needing to
yeah.
get from A to B, and this is their
Mm,
path that they've
this
unfortunately
is
had to come across. As is
yeah.
in the Underdark, for example, we could actually theme it as an Underdark thing, perchance.
Mm,
They're going from Menzoberranzan, the great city
the Great Drow
underneath.
City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Great Drow City, which is absolutely gorgeous in and of itself. But if
Mm,
anyone's seen the D&D movie, they go down in through just a random hole in the
yeah.
forest, and suddenly they're plunged into some glowing caves with eerie and strange life that lives in the Underdark. And then they do come out
Mm,
into this massive chasm that has obviously ancient ruins and is now the home of a dragon. So
yes.
yeah, we could do a section of
A
the
rather
Underdark, I
large
guess.
dragon.
Yeah,
That
big
sounds good. I
dragon.
like the chunky one. Um, I think that yeah, a really good idea having that kind of basic cave system to get from A to B, and so it's literally something the players can explore.
Mm.
Um, let's give that a go. How do you start designing it? Is it just literally at random? What are the ways that you kind of come together to bring
For
this about?
sure. Each tool's going to have its own thing, but if we kind of ignore like I'll explain my method in Dungeon Draft, but then there's also much easier ways to do it. So I don't know if that
Mm.
pops up on stream. I don't think it does. Maybe it does.
Yeah, I
The
know it
the
doesn't.
map,
I don't think it does.
yeah, for some reason doesn't actually send it out into stream, even though it's rendering on the OBS. What I basically
Okay.
have here is if I go up to the top corner and I hit new um, map, it gives me my map size. It gives the
Hmm.
template size. So if I did want to print this on A4 or A3 paper, it's going to give me the scale for printing. I
It does
generally
come
just
up, by the
go,
way. I've just
it
noted it does
has,
come
it
up.
has.
Yep.
It's taken its time. But
Yep.
there's you start off kind of thinking, am I going to print this or am I going to use it digitally for a virtual tabletop? So if I was going to
Yeah.
do what I did for Curse of Strahd recently and print off all of Castle Ravenloft, I didn't make it. You
Hmm.
can buy it on the DM's Guild. I'd choose A3 paper, and then it's immediately restricted how many tiles I can fit. So it means if I
Yep.
wanted to do it in chunks and make a bigger map that I've printed and stitched together, it's
Mm.
allowing for those measurements. But when you go into like a digital format, like a TV size, you can really get kind
Hmm.
of crazy. And then this is very useful to
Mm.
start with Map Wizard, where
Hmm.
it'll actually help you generate something specifically. So let's just try it for the sake of having it there.
While
Um,
you're while you're
yeah.
doing that, that's a good point. I've actually, because you've got Dungeon Drafts here that we're using, and
Hmm.
I'm not used to this one. I've had experience with Incarnate, which is
Mm,
also very, very handy. I find it very good. But it's
mm,
either one of these. The online tool systems that are available now to make maps are phenomenal, just in the dynamics that they have in being able to create different layers. So this is fantastic. Yeah, what's the first step? Sorry for interrupting. Go right
No, all
ahead.
good,
Just
all
thought it was a
good.
good
So
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's got two limited sort of things like dungeon and cave generator. Whereas if I can go down
Mm,
here and I can choose parameters. So how thick do I want my boundaries? How complex do I want it to be? Do I want all the
mm,
rooms incredibly dense or do I want them far apart? What would be the
mm,
primary floor that I would choose for
mhm,
this? And all of these do not come with Dungeon Draft. But as a quick idea, like if we just did a dungeon, I choose my walls. It could be some kind of
mhm.
cool carved rune walls, and then I can hit generate, and it spits out
Amazing.
a 5 6 room dungeon.
That's
And
cool.
then
That's very
if I
handy.
don't like that, I'd be like, oh no, I want more rooms, so I can add more rooms and make it more complex. And oh, they're too far
Mhm.
apart, and you can tweak and do this, and suddenly you get something loose and
Mhm.
fast. But again, this is all temporary. I can go in and change these random walls that don't really make sense. I can add rooms,
Because
delete
they're all
rooms.
because they're all
Yeah,
elements that you can change around as well.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
if I go sort of in the middle with not too complex, I get a pretty
Mhm.
cool 5 room dungeon. But if we kind of
Mm.
scrap all this and we go into the design tool and the buildings tool, I can now expand and add rooms using
Mm.
what is called I think it's called the building tool. So the building makes
Mhm.
buildings. It's not the tool with which one builds. And then if I
Mhm.
wanted a circular room, it'll do that. And then polygonical
Mhm.
freeform shapes for all the weird, interesting things that we might want to achieve.
That's really
Um,
cool.
yeah, so I guess we can kind of quickly blast through, and I can show you like now that I'm in this, I can add a room that is purely made out of that tile, and
Mm.
it'll add the floor but
Yes.
expand the room. And so you
And it
can
gives it a
kind of be a
different
lot,
texture and a different feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can be a lot quicker with it. And then diving into some of the nuance of it, if I wanted to trace over this wall and suddenly have this wooden backed brick wall that I really like, it's actually
Mhm.
chucked it underneath my. That's the other fun thing, is you need to bear in
Layers.
mind the layers, and then it's also
Yeah.
chucked on this shadow, so you can see
Yeah.
each wall has its own chunk of shadow, which I don't usually add. You can turn that off, and then if I was to do a chunk of room, it has not added
Yeah.
that now.
Yeah.
But we're getting into all the minutiae of it. What I might just do is
Mm.
make a new. We're going to discard this. We're going to make a new one.
Mhm.
Don't want it quite that big.
Mm.
We'll just make a new blank slate, and we can go from there, because I can very quickly use um, the building tool to start carving something out.
Mm.
And we might just go ahead with a an entranceway,
Mm.
um, some sort of
So
organic ground. Yeah.
while you're putting that in there as well, Sammy on the chat, thanks for your message and your question. Could you make the whole map of the Dungeon of the Mad Mage? I'm familiar with that one as well. I've run a few games in there. For any of you who know it out there, it's a 20 plus levels of dungeon, and they're not small, that's for sure. You could certainly do it, because I think the maps in the actual official game, done by Dyson Logos, who's amazing, but they are very minimalized, kind of black and white sketch kind of thing. And so I've seen some online versions of Dungeon of the Mad Mage that have been done with things like Dungeon Draft or Incarnate that look phenomenal. They've added way more levels of design. Just for example, if anyone knows the great Beholder Lair of Xanathar, I've seen a few versions of that that look phenomenal using something like this, and it gives a lot more detail than the ones in the original book. So that's, I guess, the good thing, isn't it? Do you find that as well, Jared, for
Mm.
maps that you find to be able to kind of recreate them or to put your own spin on it because you can use tools like this?
Yeah, I love doing that. I absolutely love if there is something basic that Dyson has made in these published modules that we're putting out these days. You can absolutely embellish them and make them your own, as well as, I guess, just taking ideas from them and then making your own terrain and maps and stuff, because sometimes areas
Mm.
aren't described that you feel combat might break out in as well. So if you
Mm.
are someone who wants to have a map there, um, it's absolutely possible to embellish and make that your own. And then there's going to be some sort of basic ideas for terrain and caves that would just really look amazing with because
Mm.
I've also run Eberron stuff. So I'll take 3.5
Mm.
Eberron basic sketches where it's like, okay, they're in a mine now. Well, I'll
Yeah.
make a whole cool complex mine that has interesting walls. And yeah, you can absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go so far as to make Mad Mage, um,
That's a lot. It's a big
but
map.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I have recently just printed off and done my own version of Ravenloft, but that was something that I bought
Mm.
online. and print it out myself. And you could see that it was kind of made using something like, I think it was even made using Dungeon Draft. So someone's meticulously gone through in
Mm,
each room and put that out so that you can print it at scale.
mm.
So if you really,
Well,
really, really wanted to, yes.
well, do you want to describe what you're doing right now? Because it looks like you're creating the pathway into the caves. Is that right?
Yeah, so my favorite brushes to work with are these terrain ones because it quickly gives you an idea of what environments are you in. So if I'm just painting the
Mm,
outside of this, we could take the terrain dirt, which is the default one, and we make it like moss or grass or
mm,
sand or something. And that immediately gives us a new flavor. And some of these textures are going to be slightly more detailed than others because I
mm,
will get them from different places. So if we do away with the snow
mm,
and we just kind of start painting perhaps the entrance way, we're going to think, okay, well, I want some dirt and stuff in the general area, and you start layering it down. How big your brush is, how intense it is how thick it's going to come down. So I could have a large brush that's going to be very sparse,
yeah,
but you can
scattershot.
also, yeah, and you can increase that intensity if you wanted to cover a big area.
Mm,
So perhaps this is the entrance of our cave. We don't want to take up too much of our canvas here because we would like to get into the
mm,
nuts and bolts. And what I generally will do is check out my canvas, keep checking in on it, and try and do broad strokes before we really nestle down into details.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's good to know too. Like you said, the broad strokes, having something like that paintbrush tool is great because you can then really just trace an outline of the kind of idea that you have, and then you can start refining it bit by bit. Um, and I just love how you've got the different layers that you can place on it too. So you've got like rubble that you had, but then also dirt as well. Um, yeah, it's a pretty handy tool.
Sure,
So
sure.
this
So
polygon that you're using at the moment.
yeah, I'm just gonna try some slightly rough, sort of maybe cave wall ideas. You can get really nuanced with it. For those curious enough how I'm drawing things, it's all left click to place points, and then when I'm done, I right click. But you
Mm,
can, once you close a room and you click, it'll seal it off when you get that green outline. And
mm,
then the walls can be a little bit tricky in this because I've got snap to grid on at the moment. If I turn that off, I can get really nuanced. So if I wanted to come in here with really soft, nuanced ideas
mm.
of an entranceway.
Yeah, as opposed to just always meeting
Mm,
the
mm,
square, the grid itself. Yeah.
mm, absolutely. And then the one thing with Dungeon Draft is it's not very clear where all of your layers and tools are. So
Mm,
I need to keep kind of going back and reminding myself where these areas are, and now kind of going to clean up. When you're making a map as well, there's obviously areas that if you are using it as a battle map, not just a reference map, there's areas that the players aren't going to see or that you don't expect them to ever look at. So this
mm,
cave is obviously a high traffic area based on the amount of, well, it's a cobblestone
mm,
texture, but it serves a beautiful sort of muddied up high traffic
mm,
area. And I can always
mm.
choose another one of these textures to change that slightly if I find one that might just have a bit of greenery or something to it. Again, the way that it structures these lists, I believe I'm also using quite an outdated version. I believe they've structured this
Mm.
far better because it's going to be near impossible for me to come back and scroll through all of these textures.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot of textures to choose from. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty wild. So what I might do instead of all of this dirt that we've got here, this cobblestone, I might just change that back to moss, or I can make it slightly different greenery. And then when I
Mm,
take my light gravel, now I'm just kind of making a dirt path through, um,
mm.
and just changing
And
that there's a
that's the
path
path that people have
here.
travelled into the
Yeah,
actual cave. Yeah.
yeah. So we're looking at this here, and then it's obviously going to change into something more earthy. So this is just like a swampy terrain, but I like it for a flat stone texture.
Mm. So while you're doing this, you're actually
Mm,
not just looking at the techniques and the tools that you've got to hand, but also thinking about the nature of, okay, well, this room has to be, or this area, like you were saying, the entrance to the cave. Oh, yeah, it's not just going to be gravel all across it. No, it's actually going to be mainly grass, but there's this gravelly kind of like road to it. So you refine the map as you go, it sounds
Hmm.
like, to give that kind of detail. And that also then brings life to the maps of things that make more sense, and it gives it a bit more depth.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely
Mm.
always tweaking, and you're never going to know exactly what because eventually you're going to obviously um, take in all of the tools and assets that are available to you,
Mm.
and you're going to learn how they synergize and how they work. So now I'm taking the terrain dry grass, and I'm kind
Mm.
of pushing into with a less intensity this path, and I'm refining it,
Mm.
kind of shaping it down. And this is where it comes into like, how much time do you have? How much do you want to
Yeah.
spend on this? So I can make it a lot less contrasty and everything. But if I just wanted a basic entrance way, I could splodge down this, this, and this. Um, but then my objects, if I get into this, is also going to be an intense sort of experience when you get down into these objects. Um,
Mm.
Now we're starting to see a bit more of a 3D environment and the color and texture of these stones that I'm using. And again, I would obviously not just repeat the same one multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you can actually use things like the scatter tool. And the scatter tool is really fun because I can choose uh, a multitude of these rocks from the same sort of color and effect. And every time I click, it
Yeah.
randomly rotates, scales, and puts down a different rock. So
I was going to ask you about that. There's
yeah,
a similar thing on Incarnate that allows you to simply, it just does a random rock each time, which makes it a
yeah.
lot more interesting.
And so if I wanted to just maybe trace out a line of a cliff face
Mm.
or a rocky mouth cave with one of the pathing tools, I can do that.
Mm.
And then just chuck down a bunch of large rocks to actually make that look good. And then you can pick and choose your layers once you if you wanted to get rid of that. But the wall layer is always going to be quite high, and
Mm.
where you're placing your objects and the layer that you're interacting with is here. So above roofs and above walls is always super, super high. So if I actually
Mm-hmm.
now place these on top of the walls, it works as we would expect. But then I have to place it above walls using the right tool. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can really, really dive into the complexities of it, but at the same time,
Mhm.
just basic loose and fast is how I like to start. Um,
Mm.
and you can always go from there. Perhaps a body of water nearby, or a mystic pool in the middle of our uh,
Mm.
thing. But yeah, I
That's looking
think
good.
yeah, I think we change to so we're thinking Underdark, which
Uh-huh.
doesn't necessarily look like this, but our outer world that everyone's come from
Mm.
is gonna look like this. So if we just define the outer world being this perhaps arid area now, we've done away with the grass. That's no longer in our
Yeah.
necessities and our wants and needs.
Mm-hmm.
But we come from an arid area into something a little more dark, dangerous, and weird.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yes. Ah, interesting.
So this itself could have been, um, the entrance to an underground, a dwarven cave or chasm or something, or a
Mm.
mine that they had, and it's over time been taken over, and then that leads further on into the Underdark. Um, so we're also taking up quite a bit of real estate. I'm realizing on our
Mm.
canvas,
Well, it's
and
a good
if we,
introduction anyway, just to see how
mm,
to. I think also because of, like, as you said, the detail that you can get into, it's kind of good to have something large to start off with just to get an idea of things.
yeah.
So, how would you refine this then if you wanted to bring it down to have it with a few rooms inside?
So I guess we just start putting walls down would be obviously the easiest. I've snapped grid back on because I want some structure and ease of use. I'll
Mm-hmm.
throw down a basic entranceway, and then if I feel like this would be decorated, we could start putting in like statues or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really, really enjoy using different walls to represent different rooms and different floors. and tiles to represent different rooms, and that's a quick visual discernment because, again, if you're taking these line drawing maps, such as Dyson's or anything similar,
Mm.
they're very, very hard to sometimes discern, especially with virtual tabletops. I'm realizing as soon as you actually add color to them, and it's not just like a token
Mm.
on a flat surface or something. As soon as you add color, everything's a little bit wishy-washy, and I like players
Mm.
to actually really see where they're at and what their
What they're
location is on the map.
encountering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what they're encountering. So I'm using the terrain tool here, but I only get 4 of these. So I'm actually going to limit myself in this room to quick, loose lines to fill this out. But each further
Yeah.
room, I'm going to use the flooring tool
Okay.
to make life much, much easier for myself.
Okay.
Hmm.
So that's great. We've got this basic initial kind of like meeting room,
Hmm.
and then we can branch out here.
Mm-hmm.
But what's in this room? Would you think about now the other rooms first, or would you want to detail this room first?
Yeah,
Like
let's
what's in
let's just
here?
detail this room. We could immediately I'm imagining a bit of a staircase. For
Mhm.
some reason, either up or down. So I'll go over to my
Mhm.
objects, and again, you can craft individual stairs yourself. There's lots of
Right.
ways of doing this. I also love this tool, this sort of feature, I should say, in Dungeon Draft, where you can chuck a term in, and much like Google will interpret what you're saying, it kind of
Mhm.
goes, well, these aren't stairs, but they're chairs. Did you
Mhm.
want chairs? No, I want to make it a
Sure.
bit more precise, thank you. And now it's
Okay.
taken out all of the chairs and it's giving me stairs
Stairs.
and any
Okay.
object that would be stair adjacent. And some of these really cool
Oh
things that
wow.
people have made is just this overlay tool. So if I rotate it to face the right way, I've taken the
That's
texture
great.
underneath and I'm
Mm.
effectively making a staircase out of it.
To give it a
Which
three-dimensional feel of a staircase. Yeah, that's really clever.
Yeah, very, very cool. And we could just honestly plonk that down there, and we're suddenly getting a rough feeling of a staircase, and it's using our existing textures or using the exact same tool. Um, we're chucking down a grand staircase made of different stone, which immediately indicates
Mm.
to me that we're going to a different area. And I really
Mm.
like that.
Yeah.
Just the slight gradient of dark to light um, shows that that staircase is either going up or down.
Mhm.
Then we could embellish it and add interesting corners and things.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's a strange corner on this side. I'm playing it pretty loose and fast because I'd rather make something rather than really
Yeah.
getting down into what I would normally do. Because if I were going to do something like this, I'll just kind of show my school of thought is I'd pick pieces that I want and I'd start chucking them down in a
Yeah.
sort of palette on the side. And then I can
Mm.
always go back to them rather than me looking for that exact tiny little stone pillar railing doolally. I'd rather come back in and go, right, this object I now want to make
Yeah.
a duplicate of, and then I can make duplicates. So I'll create a palette and I'll go through, if I want to have a visual theme for a room, I will go through the objects. I'll find effectively, because also when I go back in here, it does reset your search. It'll keep what you search
Yeah.
for and how detailed you want it. But yeah, let's say that there's a grand staircase going up. Our objects are doing their own thing here at the moment. But yeah, we don't want.
I like
No, yeah.
I,
Hmm.
I like to see that you can see that there's a new layer to that staircase because it's put a shadow onto the ground below it,
Hmm.
just at the bottom lip there, which is really cool.
Mm.
So yeah, it gives that kind of sense, of three dimensionality to it, which is very nice.
I love the opacity and all of that sort of stuff that you can do with this because my favorite thing to do is not just put these objects in, but
Mm.
to change the lighting and to give it depth. So if we go from stairs to statue, something that matches the tone, way too big, of
Mm.
course. Um, we could put a grand statue of some sort of cloaked figure, perhaps
Mm.
a guardian of some sort on the other side, making a little bit
Mm.
asymmetrical. Um, and then what I'll do, because I'll put that on a certain layer. Now, here I've made a bit of a blunder. I've left this object tool layer on the above walls. do not really want to be doing that. What I
Very
want
high.
is to have that on anything that I'm placing down that isn't on the floor. I usually do layer 2 or 3. And the reason I'll do that is we'll put our guardian there, and we'll put our cloaked figure here. The reason I'll do that is because when I come in and do my refining, I'll grab these shadow layers, and these shadow tools are utterly fantastic. And they're going to be a little bit hard to see, but I'll do my best to show them off. So as you can see, this is literally just a dark patch. And currently, because I'm using the same layer, I'm going to keep building on top. So I could chuck a bit of a shadow towards the back of these statues to cast their light on the front.
The shadow behind.
It also just sinks them into the background a little bit. Now my staircase is far more prominent, but now under the staircase, I can chuck a bit more shadow to, that's actually popping. Yeah, it's also popping it off the background too much. But as soon as I go to this layer 1 or even below water, I can really chuck a bunch of shadow behind that, and make it look like that is a dark, dingy corner. So I'll refine my brush size right down, and there's different opacities and intensities. So I like to use a 60% circle full for 99% of what I do, but there is actually a 60% right angle. So instead of doing what I'm doing and watching for overbleed, I could just chuck that down in that corner and it works exactly correct. So that's nice and clean. You can do that. I could chuck a semi circle on the front just because the light right there might not work. But then the really, really cool stuff is when you have trees that have got built-in shadows, but it's not going to show me the trees that don't, because maybe I want to put the shadow in a different direction, or I want to do something slightly different. It gives me just the shadows. And then this is also fun because this is a light tool. So let's say that there was a soft green glow from this guy and a soft yellowish, orangish glow perhaps from this guy. Not quite as intense.
Yeah.
Very intense.
Bring it down a bit.
So suddenly there's a little bit of differentiation, interesting things. It also, Dungeon Draft does interesting things with portals, and what they call portals are any light anywhere where vision can go through or not go through. So the reason I would want to do that is because if I use the portal tool, that is going to create a door that is locked to a wall. I can't place these doors anywhere else. Now, for anyone who's familiar with Roll20 or Foundry or any of these other really cool virtual tabletops that use line of sight and fog of war, when you export this using the right method, you transcribe and you grab all of that information, and then when you import it into those things, it'll do all of the walls and doors and stuff. So in Foundry, for example, a door is a clickable thing that I can open and close, and I can attach an audio cue to. So for the Alien roleplay system, as per the map we started with, I went into Foundry, I tweaked the door opening and closing, so when and unlocking. So when the players lock and unlock it, it's like a key card blip, and it goes blip blip. And then when they open and close it, it's two different sounds for opening and closing. But it does come by default with ka-clink, ka-chonk with big heavy metal wooden door frame. But you can place these. Yeah, so you can place these freeform. You can place, like a nice big large wooden door, and chuck that down, and suddenly that leads somewhere interesting. And now it's factored in, and it's adjusted the walls, and it's done all of that for me. So it's restrictive, but also not restrictive. And sometimes I can't actually do anything with that until I go into my edit tool and I can start doing stuff. I can decide whether or not this blocks or allows light, which is super fun for Windows. But we're not going to worry about that too much, I don't think, because there wouldn't be much purpose to Windows in this underground cave. But we can chuck some cool portals down, and we can some cool doorways.
While you're looking for those, just a shout out to Los AU for your question in the chat. Thank you very much. I had a question for you, Jared.
Mm,
For your experience in particular, because this is through Dungeon Draft, what would you
mm.
say this can do that Dungeon Alchemist can't do, or you find easier to do in this?
Uh, at its current state, this has a lot more community made content for it. I think the
Mm.
2D, bird's eye perspective map making approach has been so hard and fast for such a long time. Um, this allows a lot more layering and lighting options. Dungeon Alchemist, at the moment, I'm kind of underwhelmed by the lighting options. You
Mm.
can do a color, a direction, whether it's light or dark. Um, and then I think certain objects you can kind of put points of light on. So I don't actually know how nuanced I could get with that. Plus, because like these 2D assets are so much easier to create and import and export and create these packs for, I've got things where I recently made a dungeon, a jail with lots of cells, and I went with a bed frame, so a sort of kind of broken bed frame, and then I put a layer of straw on that, and then I put a scrap of cloth on top of that. And that
Mm.
was the bed that I wanted to create. Whereas when you go into something more advanced like Dungeon Alchemist, all these 3D assets, I would love to
Mm.
see how they're actually going to let me make a bed that works for me. Like
Yeah.
they have these grand four-post beds, and things like that. You'll actually see in the background of my camera here, this was all made in Dungeon Draft and then quickly ran through an image AI generator to take off the video game edge look of it, even though you can still see trees out the top of the room. Um, that's what I did is I've taken sort of a writing desk, and I've taken a candle, and I've taken a bookshelf, and I've taken a bed, and then once I ran it through the AI art thing, it gave it a different look. So I would say if you really want to get nuanced and you really want to place things exactly where you want, these tools are going to, the Dungeon Draft and Incarnate and things are going to be far more accessible, and like they're going to let you achieve what you want to achieve a lot quicker, I think.
I think it
Um,
sounds from what it sounds like, it's a bit more advanced with the 2D kind of tools because of the number of years that it's been worked on. And 3D kind of design is still a bit early in stages. Is that right?
yeah, I think, and also like you can run this on a less powerful computer, for example. So
Yeah. Mm.
this I wouldn't be surprised if people could just run it on their laptops. I have a gaming PC, so buying Dungeon Alchemist was never a hesitation for me.
Mm.
Um, I knew that it was going to work for me and work as packaged. Um, but yeah, like immediately just kind of showing off this lighting thing. I can chuck an
Yeah.
object
Yeah.
down, a torch and a sconce or a bit of a wall brazier
Mm.
or something, and then I go into the light tool, and you can just see how
That's so cool.
spectacular it
Yeah.
is. So all of these are also expanded assets. They don't all come with
The
come
basic
come
dungeon draft.
yeah, they don't all come with basic Dungeon Draft.
Mm.
But Dungeon Draft is being updated quite often. I usually use this pinpoint kind of one or this soft
Mm.
one. So this is an area fill. I like this for like magic stuff. I don't know, it gives a bit of a pulsing sort of feel, but there's all sorts
Mm.
of fun lighting that you can
It's like
muck around with.
it's almost like glitter ball for a second. That would be an interesting look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But I love that.
but
Yeah, that just
yeah.
to be able to have that just soft light across everything, it does look really great.
Mm. And then because it also this also integrates with Foundry so well for me,
Mm.
because it takes these lights that I've just put down is a light
Yeah.
source in Foundry now. So in
Mm.
Foundry I can now grab that and animate it. So if I wanted a flickering torchlight or a candle, or if I wanted a strange swirling magical glow, I'm not restricted by this static swirl that I've got here. I can chuck that down, and it'll just remind me that when I go into Foundry, I'll change that to an animated thing. This
Mm.
is kind of cool. We could say that this door was open, or
Yeah.
any of these were open, and the one thing that Dungeon Drafts is also a little fiddly is for me to rotate this. I can't just rotate it like I've been doing the other objects. I'll place it down, and then when I go in and grab this as a lighting thing, I can scale it and I can rotate it and I can do different things with it. I can change the light intensity and the where the object is and stuff. And then I think I need a very specific grab hand. There it is.
There
And
it
then I
is.
can
Yeah.
rotate it 90 degrees, and then I can put it in my doorway.
Mm.
So sometimes more fiddly than I would like, but at the end of the day, I'm here to craft something and make something that's fun for me to look at, fun for me to build, and fun for the players to interact with. So yeah, we can just keep fleshing out this
Okay.
room. I might just chuck some more objects down. But yeah, if anyone, yeah, no, that you're right, Loz. I've noticed that people. It took me a while to actually find that checkbox, even though it's pretty easy to find. It took me a while to find the no clip, the no collision um, thing, because it was just something I kept looking for and I was expecting to find, and it didn't jump out at me at first. So now that I did know about that, it's expanded my abilities there. So I'm trying to find, we could chuck down some like ruins or something, but also
That's
because
cool.
I've supported so many content creators, it's interesting to see the different textures and stuff. So like this doesn't quite gel with the other,
The same design. Yeah.
the same texture and effect. So I might just give it a bit more of a broad thing, and we'll go with like ruins, and then I'll find some of the assets here. It's not really jumping out at me, but perhaps some of our statues have had some history to them, because that's the other thing I'll do is I'll just go in and be like, what do I want in this room? What's a broad thing that I can do? I could say hall. And you can do entire buildings in Dungeon Draft, and you can make sort of town maps and stuff. But perhaps here we go, some tapestries or interesting crystals or something. So what's happened to the history of this place? Now I'm thinking, we're in the Underdark. Would there be a purpose to having some large crystals? Would there be a reason that they were here initially as part of the purpose and the design? Were they not?
By the way, it is a really nice array of assets that you've got showing there too. Some really interesting pieces there. So it's really nice to be able to draw on that amount of things. So you have to upload or pay for a lot of the extra assets.
Yeah, so basically you can create asset packs that the application can read. So it gets kind of annoying when you want to make your own asset pack from stuff that you found on the net. But luckily, these people on Patreon and things like that, I'll actually just quickly give a bit of a shout out to these guys. So we've got Tom Kardos. He does really, really, really nice stuff. So his prefab assets are like tables and bookshelves and things like that. And he makes it in a style that's not too dissimilar from the Dungeon Draft style. Gnome Factory will do, again, different assets like sci-fi stuff that is, again, similar to the hand-drawn style of Dungeon Draft. So they integrate quite well. As soon as you get into these guys like Forgotten Adventures, we're talking much more high detail, much more intricate textures, and things like that. I can't remember who AOA are, but they will do, I use these for clouds and weather and texture and tone and things like that, which can integrate with almost anything. Captain Tom does sci-fi stuff. So these are all people that I have or do support on Patreon in order to use their stuff, mainly because I was using them for clients in commercial games. So I just love supporting these creators. But yeah, the Forgotten, if you really want to get into Dungeon Draft, Forgotten Adventures, check out their website, because they also have, I think, probably 99% of the monster manual done at this point. Like whatever's been out there as system reference document, whatever that they are allowed to make, they have done so, and it's fantastic, and it's all organized by challenge rating. So I have folders and folders.
Nice.
I don't bother putting them into Dungeon Draft because I'm not really going to bother with tokens and creatures. I'm going to want to use those in Foundry or my virtual tabletop.
That's good. There's such an array of stuff that you can, the assets that you can actually get in touch with and upload, which is really good to see. And the idea of also the Is it through Patreon, did you say, for a number of them that you're supporting them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
really check
I
out
think I've
Patreon.
done.
There's gonna be I can't remember what it is, but there's if you literally just Google cartography assets, you will
Yeah.
find places. And the other really cool thing about cartography assets is all the creators make it very, very clear where you can get their stuff, whether it's free or paid, whether
Mhm.
it's a sample pack, and it tells about
Mm.
the Creative Commons. So what kind of creative license you're allowed to use, because sometimes they'll give you a sample that you're allowed to use for your own personal use. But then as soon
Mm.
as you pay for it, you unlock more options.
Yeah.
Like color variations is one thing. I know that Forgotten Adventures, like you can get their basic packs and it'll be like, right, here's like challenge 1/4 to challenge rating 1 beasts. But if you want like 6 different colors of an eagle, and you can have like a snowy kind of white looking bird and things like that, or just dogs and wolves, for example. I love that for my Curse of Strahd campaign, because
Mm.
the wolves and the werewolves are playing a big impact in this running of Curse of Strahd that I'm running. So to be able to have a pack of werewolves there, and some of them are these darker wolves, and some of them are lighter. The leader, for example, is always going to be his own unique one, so that the players can kind of discern that on the map. So
Percent. Yeah.
mm, yeah,
That's
you'll want to
fantastic.
dig into some stuff. So yeah, I was wondering if we didn't want to put something organic down. We can
Mm.
chuck in some funny looking mushrooms, for
Vegetation or
example.
mushrooms. Yeah. In the
Yeah.
corner, kind of sprouting out. That sounds
Mm.
good.
Something also very cool is these creators will make their own colored versions. So these sort of mushroom greens, as you can see in the descriptor, is colored that color. But all of these ones are labeled colorable. So what the creator has to do is make that a specific, I believe it's like a specific tone of red, whatever the color code is. And then it's kind of like green screen, where I can now substitute whatever color I want in there. So all of these are now
Okay.
orange, yeah, which is hella
That's
fun.
really cool. Yeah.
And you can see them change live. And then what this will do, what I'll generally do, if I'm looking for a colorable asset, I'll make it neon or chroma key green.
Yeah.
And then if I'm looking through and I'm going, all right, these are all normal different colors, that's great. But if I'm scanning through quickly, I can see that whatever this wall trap thing or broken
Can be
wall
colorable.
can be colorable, and then I'll suddenly
Yeah.
rip kind of grab my attention. And I think
Because
we're
you've
at
got
a
more
point.
option with it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I like that as well with
That's
Dungeon
good.
Draft, as it really gives you some creative stuff you
That's a
can
lot of
do.
fungi. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
Um,
mushrooms.
I think I've actually highlighted too many. I've frozen the program. Um, I was thinking we could just grab all the different colored styles and just scatter them throughout the chamber.
A whole,
But
a blossom.
I think I've frozen it, which means we may, if it doesn't come back, we may have lost everything we've done because I haven't been saving.
No.
I don't think Dungeon Draft auto saves, which is a pain.
That's a really good question. So on
Mm.
Incarnate, as an example, I think when you get to about 150 edits, it will
Mm.
say, do you want to save it now? And then when it hits 250, it's
Mm.
like, you should save now, otherwise you will lose everything probably or something. But you
Mm.
still, it's not an automatic save. You have to do it yourself. Does this have an autosave? Do you have to do it yourself? And is it
I'm
something you
not.
have to just keep track
Yeah,
of?
I'm not actually too sure. I think we have crashed, which is very unfortunate.
No.
Um, that's okay.
It
That's okay.
happens. That's all good.
It does.
Would you happen
So
to
that's
have
something I
another?
need to remember. Yeah.
Hey, well, at least we've got it for posterity, and we have witnesses for people who saw you make it. So we know it has been done. So that was really cool. But that was a really good introduction, anyway, just on the basics of pulling one together. Maybe that's a good
Yeah.
point, because you could then, if you want, open up maybe another map that you've already done, something that actually may be a bit more complex, so you can talk about particular aspects of it and what you did
Let's check
to
it
that.
out.
Yeah.
Well,
So while you're doing that, everyone else out there, is Jared's preparing for this, because we're going to have a look at this, as technical issues do sometimes happen, which is one of the wonderful things for gaming online. But what we're going to do is we'll have probably keep going for about another 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we'll have a quick break for about 15 minutes, and we'll jump into the part 2 of this just after our break and go through till about 6 or just after 6:30, I think. So while we're having a look at that, Yeah, what maps are you currently making at the moment? Can you say, like, for what campaigns you're currently running?
Yeah, so I'm running Spelljammer, and one of my client games, I'm running Curse of Strahd. I have made a couple of different Curse of Strahd things in the past, um, but
Mm.
this is definitely one of my experiment pages I've just pulled up. I just grabbed a random one.
Oh, good.
Um, so I was running a Cyberpunk campaign
Oh,
using
cool.
I think it's called Carbon. I don't want to get the year wrong. It's Carbon. I don't want to say 2077 because that's obviously
Yeah,
um,
yeah, Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
But there's like Carbon Year in the Future, and it's a fifth edition mod um, for D&D to roll to run purely cyberpunk aesthetic and world. So this is really what I like to do, and this is, imagine this is like my sketchbook. So I've gone into this map with no particular purpose because
yeah.
I'm used to all the fantasy assets,
Okay.
but sometimes I'm not used to obviously I'm not used to the sci-fi ones because I don't do them as much. As you can see, a completely non-specific alien egg and creature. But then there's also things like this where the creator has obviously pulled something that's clearly from Games Workshop, and I couldn't tell you what this was.
Yeah,
But that's something I've had to do as a paid GM, is I've had to be really, really careful that I'm not running something either on stream or with a client, because you do need to watch copyright, because anybody can make stuff and pop it
yeah,
in here. Um, and
yeah.
even down to the detail of this pool table, for example, is the pool table's one asset, um, the billiard balls are their own thing, and then I've chucked down this cool looking logo on top, and I've lowered the opacity to make it look like that is part of the felt of the table, which is quite cool. I knew that the players were going to use bikes to escape in their next campaign,
Okay.
and then this is a power loader with traditional colors, and then again colorized with
Some
the assets that
Mandalorian
I wanted
symbols
to.
there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you're doing something cool and creative like this, it's all fun.
Yeah,
But you do kind of have to be careful if you're using it for commercial purposes.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
And then as you can see, I've limited the amount of assets I've actually got. So all of these Forgotten Adventures ones are disabled for the purposes of
Mm,
me building this, because I'm not really going to need a paper scroll or something. I'd rather have a cool glass tablet doolally or doohickey. So then that's what I've got here, is I've got like interesting layers like this little bit of newspaper and this random scrap of
mm,
metal and this random servo arm, and I think even this keyboard are all things and objects that I've colorized similar and layered down, even the barrels being stacked. So that's one of
mm,
my favorite things to do, is actually just fill a room with scattered objects. So I've chucked off a
mm,
curtained area, put a random green sink and barrels, and then a floor hatch that this robo
mm.
barman might utilize. Um, yeah,
Quick escape.
and
Yeah.
yeah. So let me chuck.
That's pretty good to see. It's basically like just an asset page that you can have a look and just see different options that you've got for something you might want to use.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, that sounds really good.
yeah.
Uh,
I don't know what I'm pulling up now. I'm just pulling random saved files up.
mhm.
But yeah, I love doing that. Like my methodology with dungeon mastering is the mise en place, the have everything at hand kind of methodology. Just like I
Mm,
said when we were doing that little cave entrance, if you scroll through an asset sort of refined thing. So if I wanted to do a library, for example, I'd want like a desk, book, chairs, maybe a carpet, some lighting, and I'll go through ahead of
mm,
time rather than try and pick the perfect thing each time. I'll go through and I'll
mm,
grab a couple of lights, I'll grab a couple of carpets, and I'll put all of those to the side in the canvas so that I know what they look like and I can quickly reference a shorter list of things, which makes life a
mm.
lot easier.
It's a bit like a workshop, is really kind of what you're saying, because you actually have a table then, and then your main workplace is here, but you're actually putting all the other additional tools on your side that you go, or you can pull in whenever you need to. Saves you a lot of time, I can imagine too.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about trying to do things as efficiently as possible because, like I said, I've
Mm,
you can spend a lot of time. So it looks like I was trying to make another sci-fi ship here with an interesting shape to it.
okay.
So I've obviously gone through, like, I couldn't tell you where this floor texture is. But I've obviously chosen this floor texture. I've colorized it so that each room has a slight subtle difference to it as you
Hmm.
look at it. And then I've started to plonk down a bunch of sci-fi things. I
Okay.
don't think I have any. I don't think I have any fantasy ones. That's weird.
Ah.
I don't know where I would have saved them. Oh
Mm,
no, that's here we go. No, I thought that had a map in it.
hmm.
Ah, Quarry. Rose Quarry. Here we go.
Okay.
Here's something that I've pulled from Eberron. Now, unfortunately, it's come up with a warning because when I made this, I would have used Forgotten Adventures, Artificial Terrains, and it's labeled
Hmm.
slightly differently. So yeah, it actually that's the one thing with Dungeon Draft as well, is it doesn't really it's a very interesting structure. Uh,
Mm,
the way that it pulls files and the way that it imports stuff and does all of those things.
hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not really letting me. So this is a valley that I've done that has like markers on it.
Hmm.
Um, we could just let's just start a new one. We can just keep
That sounds
fiddling
good.
away. But I might
So
just do a pre-populated. I'll chuck a 5 room dungeon up using the wizard, and we'll just start filling
yeah,
it with stuff.
that's that's a good idea. Well, that's while that's coming up, then quick question, because that's very much about you've been making a few things that look like battle maps, which are
Mm.
very useful for, of course, miniature style or for very much real time kind of gaming. Um, do you do maps for like geography or things which are more just symbolic to be able to give people references to places, that kind of thing, but they're less, you know, um, dimensionally based? You don't have to have this is something for their characters to walk through. It's simply something for like a map of a place or a location or a country or a whatever.
So the makers of Dungeon Draft also have Wonder Draft,
Mm,
which is really more about terrain and geographical stuff.
mm,
That's not to say that you couldn't pull that off in this, because
okay.
I can put down grass, I can put down trees, and I can get very, very nuanced with how small those things are and where they end up
Mm,
being placed, and the depth of how things look and feel is
mm,
also something that's very easily varied. So you can, um, but I would say the biggest zoom out I would do with Dungeon Draft would probably be a village. Um,
okay.
yeah, like I've done
That's what
some
it's
docks
tailored
and
to.
stuff before. Yeah, I've done some docks where it's got a section of buildings, a section of
Mm,
the docks with some ships around it, and the players could walk and wander through a much, much bigger region. Um, yeah,
mm,
and that was again probably more demonstrative than anything else. It wasn't necessarily for the purposes
yeah.
of battle map, but it just gave a cool environment for them to hang out in, which was a good
Yeah.
idea.
And to explore. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So, because it is a different way of thinking. I was thinking about that as well for some of the games I've run recently, and having literally just a regional map so that the players have an idea of, okay, we've been here, we've got to get to there, we've been by there, etc. Just to give a sense of a spatial awareness of what the world is like, which is always a lot of fun to make.
Mm.
But it is a different way of thinking compared to this level because you go more symbolic the more you go out in a way. And whereas this is kind of the grain of detail, you can actually go quite deep into detail for this too.
Mm. Absolutely. So this is probably like if I was to create a 5 room dungeon or any kind of a rough dungeon, this would be my approach. Would be make up some chambers, make up some rooms, and then quickly
Mm,
chuck down some ideas of flooring. Now,
mm-hmm.
the thing with the flooring is it doesn't quite work like the colorizing of objects. You can tint very subtly
Hmm.
the color of a floor in this. So if I wanted something that was a bit more of a bluish gray slate, if I took out some of the color, I can chuck that
Hmm.
down, and it's using the exact same texture that I've chosen, but chucked a color over
Hmm.
the top. And then we
Okay.
could say, yeah, which is really fun, really, really fun.
Okay.
And even if I just don't quite like how bright that is, I will just lower and chuck a tint over that mussy darkness, and that's better for me. I think that suits that
Okay.
purpose a little bit more. And so, yeah, I think the quickest thing, because you'll see on Reddit, people will quickly chuck up a map and say, "Hey, what do you guys think of my latest map?" Which is
Yeah.
great because I love people to share whatever part of their artistic journey they're on. And
Hmm.
sometimes people get quite critical quite quick, and they're like, "Oh, you don't have any
Mm.
lighting. There's no nuance to this." And it's like, well, just shut up and enjoy the fact that somebody's made something. It's not, they're not going to know that they can do that. And I mean, if you
Yeah.
didn't, yeah, if you didn't really know or look for that, God, it would just get too hairy too quickly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Asking for feedback is always, yeah, I think context is a big thing too. I think that's a really good, important point. Um, I find it interesting, yeah, what you're doing for this map now. Do you have, when you go into making a map like this, for example, like this 5 room dungeon, how much information do you come in beforehand to say, like, the purpose of it or why you're building it to then say this is going to help how you design it?
Um, yeah, I'll generally I will make a map that has a purpose. For a client of mine that I did a one shot, it was a birthday adventure, and they specifically said we want to rescue someone, like they said it doesn't have to be a princess, but they specifically said they wanted to rescue someone, and they wanted it to be like in a mountainous, snowy environment.
Okay.
So I can't remember the exact plot of it, but I created a sort of mountain path up to what was then going to be the bigger dungeon, and then I thought, okay, well, what would somebody want? So why would somebody bother to build something so far away up in the mountains? Is
Yeah.
there powerful, is it a powerful wizard who's trying to keep their magic safe from other people? Are they trying to hide
Hmm.
something? Or is it just somebody who prefers to live in seclusion? So someone or something had to create or build that, either centuries or minutes ago. Um,
Yeah.
and again, those facilities are going to require, and they're going to have a certain purpose when they're created. Now, if it was obviously centuries ago, as per my thinking with this mossy room, perhaps some waters got in that wasn't really meant to be there, and that's left it stagnant and foul, and some creatures that like that sort of environment have made their way into it. And we can go back
Hmm.
to our mushrooms.
Yeah.
That was that worked
A
so
massive
well
mushroom
before.
room. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so
That's a
yeah,
good.
you can absolutely think of, it's not, yeah. So I guess to answer the question a bit more specifically, you think of the purpose of why an environment or an area was created, um, and
Mm.
then what's happened to it along the way. What's changed? Why has it changed? Who's mucked around with it?
Mm.
Who's playing with has the environment affected it? Has another resident come along and decided that they want to take up
Make it their own.
take up yeah, take
Yeah.
up residence there? A classic being the Sunless Citadel, obviously a great castle that was
Mm.
sunken into the earth. um,
Mm.
and kobolds and goblins have taken up residence in their own relative
Mhm.
sections
That's
of
right. That's a good one.
of the Citadel. So everyone wants to do their
But,
own thing.
yeah, I like that. So you can make it your own as well. And um,
Yeah.
as you're populating it with mushrooms there, just shouting out to Los AU for your message there. Completely based on what we were talking about before, feedback is completely, I think, yeah, what people are asking for, not judgment, or they're not actually, if they were going into judgment for something like, as you said, the Golden Demon standard painting competition, they know what they're expecting when they're going into that for that kind of judgment. I think there is a tendency more and more over time I've seen on social media and the like for people to be very quick to judge, which is a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I've had a friend of mine share something, and they said, "Hey, what did you think?" And they immediately called me out when I started giving them feedback. They were like, "Oh, no, 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 no. I just as," and like it was one of the greatest conversations ever, because it meant that they were very quick to say, "Hey, look, I actually just wanted to share something cool with someone who I thought was gonna think that this was cool." I was like, "Hey, man, it is cool. I assumed that you wanted some feedback because again, we know each other quite closely, so I wouldn't have
Mm,
felt that anything that I was saying was going to be critical or judgmental. It was
mm,
purely me wanting to share and make what he had done better, you know. But that wasn't my
mm,
place, and that wasn't the purpose of him sharing.
mm,
So
mm.
yeah, we can all learn to communicate better at the end of the day. But yeah,
Yeah,
context for sure. Like, don't friggin' assume that you know why someone's sharing something, or
mm,
just be quick to put your opinion on something.
mhm,
That's not right at all.
mm. It is easy. I think it is easy for a lot of people to think when someone's asked an opinion is for you to be able to say, well, here's my expertise and share that straight away. But it's if you're in person with another person, this is kind of going outside of this, but this is a good thing for I think in general. When you're talking to people face to face, it's much easier to read emotional context and like what is it that they're trying to ask for? Are they asking for encouragement or otherwise? And I think it's very easy online for people to jump to misread things. So I think it's like just I recommend for people being just gentle, careful, like Losse, you suggested, just encouraging people and say, well, how much? Yeah, how much do you need? How much feedback do you want? Is it just like, oh, this looks really interesting? What's the aim for it? What kind of feedback are you after? I find is something I'm working on because it's very easy for me to start thinking if I'm asked the question, yeah, what feedback can I have? Can you give me on this? It's
Mm,
like, sure, I can tell you, like, well, I'll do this, but what, am I going to be overstepping my boundary? I guess well, that is a good thing too.
mm,
So yeah, it's a good question. I think I agree. Just encouraging people is kind of the key point to start off with, and
yeah, definitely.
slowly.
Yeah,
This is looking very
let people
interesting.
yeah, let people find their way as well. Like, especially when you're early in a creative journey, the first thing I tell people is just try everything. Try,
Yeah,
try, 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 try,
and
try.
learn
Like, yeah, like
and
I
learn.
sort of started learning to draw a year ago, and I knew that I wanted to do traditional stuff, but I know that like I thrive in a digital environment, so I had to buy myself a nice tablet um, to be able to really bring out the method that I knew, but I knew that the
Okay.
fundamentals were going to be best learned through traditional medium. So bought both
Mm,
pens, pencils, and sketchbooks, and a digital tablet. Because if I learned one way or the other, I was never going to be able to adapt or expand my awareness into um, options. I wasn't. I was going to be immediately restricting myself, and that's important for me as well. Letting people
mm,
know that there are options out there, and just because you picked up one way of doing something doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it. Like cooking, for example, being a
yeah,
chef, man, people get
yeah.
intimidated by the amount of options. I don't know what I'm doing anymore in terms of this water. I've chucked a little bit of it down. That looks fine. Um,
That looks good. Yeah, like a pool has kind of seeped into this place from sorry, water has seeped in and formed a pool in this
mm,
place, and then there's a whole bunch of fungi that's kind of grown around it,
mm,
which is very cool.
and now I'm trying to think what was the original purpose of the room. So I'm thinking maybe we chuck a table or something down. Could be
Mm,
I don't know, maybe it was even a library or a writing room
mm.
or something. Um, but yeah, I think having a bit of a plan is always a good idea. Like we might just come up here and decorate this as a library, for example, because I know how to do that.
Well, how about that? Because we're going to come up in about 5-10 minutes for a break.
Mm,
So, how about if we spend a little time now about having a think about what is the purpose of these 5 rooms in this dungeon, so that we've got something.
mm,
So that means when we come back after the break too, we can start populating it based on those kind of ideas.
yeah,
So we've got a. If you want to do that, what do you think? If we've got this five
yeah,
room dungeon here,
sounds good.
looks like there's a library. There's a library that has been. It's underdark, so you've definitely got the fungi, and you've got. It's sort of sunken in. Basically, is possibly
Mm,
some strange magic that might be into the area as well. Um, but this is like an entry from one place to another. Um, if you've got a library in there, it sounds like it could be either a wizard or somebody smart who's lived there and has made it their lair or something in the past, perhaps, or um, and it's been abandoned. It was abandoned or something en route to a place. Perhaps it had a secret entrance that had been uncovered, I guess. And these guys have come across it, and it's a secret way in to get to wherever they're going. So, yeah.
Sounds good.
What do you think? Do you have any
Yeah.
ideas?
No, that sounds good.
Go with that.
Wizard's Lair, abandoned a while ago. Players could come through this area. If the cave
So
brush
these little...
is going to interact, it does. Cool. So we can quickly just carve open a chunk.
Yes, cool. So he's got a library. What other rooms would he have? So he'd have a place where he could sleep. He'd have like a resting place or whatever it would be. That would be probably not too far. Maybe an experiment chamber of some kind.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like an alchemy room or a laboratory.
Yeah, laboratory, yeah. And then maybe the final two rooms, one would be kind of like a, who knows? I was thinking like an...
Well, does this wizard live alone, or perchance he has minions or creatures that agents of his?
And they're sort of like any other rooms leading into this place. So it's like they're on the other side of the experiment chamber, perhaps. So, and they have their own lair, and then maybe a defensible position or something as the final room, because that would be like what? Oh, that was me. There you go.
Hello,
I think it's almost break time.
Awesome.
Library, bed chamber.
Well, anyone else got some cool ideas? I see OMGM's lurking in the chat, and has said we need a lab, so something special can go on this lab. Yeah, I think that cool stone
slab. Yes.
That cool stone slab could be, you know what? Let's move our labels around a little bit. Can I move the label? Can I interact with you, label? I don't. It's been a while since I've used text in this. I don't know how to get rid of that now. Aha.
Is it a layer of its own?
See ya. Well, this could be the laboratory. Down in this space, we could have a communal area. Nah.
Do you think he's kind of pro bed chambers will be in the back room?
Yeah. Let's make this big area of the bedroom. Maybe. Oh god. I feel like there's too many connected tunnels. That's what's throwing me a little bit.
They could be secret though. They could be secret ones, secret doors potentially. So they may not know that there's ways in. Laboratories down there.
Library, laboratory, bedroom. We could just chuck. I'm just going to call them minions, even though that word has now been turned into a cutesy little green thing, yellow thing.
Has it? Is that right?
No.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry.
I know what you mean. To their own little thing now.
They are, yes. Free of copyright. The original use of minions. That's right. We're using for here. I think I can see that because I've got right. Do you think laboratory and minions? I think the laboratory and it's purely spatial for me. Laboratory and the library should be next to each other, I feel.
Yeah.
So there's an easier access to research and then jump in and try it out and then research and blah, blah, blah. I love that if the library's in the center as well, instead where the minions are, then that's kind of like easy access, but there could be secret ways in and out because you've got bookcases that actually slide away and stuff like that too, if you want that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, bed chamber up here, completely hidden away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And that big room down the bottom right, bottom left, sorry, could be where the minions are.
Yeah, give them a huge amount of space.
Um, and
I feel like that could be a dining area because that's close to both the sort of residential
yeah,
areas, like where they're living. And I feel like this wizard, even though he has his minions, he still likes to dine properly.
and a
Um,
meeting, kind of a meeting area. Yeah,
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 that's where
it's not a
everybody
bad
hangs
thing.
out. And then this could just be storage. Like it probably wouldn't have been initially, but it is now. Like you're gonna need to store some stuff, and it's right next to the lab. It's right next to the library.
Yeah,
That'll work, and we can just decorate some stuff out from there. Um,
we've got a
yeah,
plan. This looks pretty
cool.
good.
Very good, very
All
good.
right. We have an idea for a dungeon, a five, 6 room dungeon in this case, something very simple. And we're going to start populating it after our break. But I think it's probably a good time for a quick break. So, guys, good to see you. Thanks for the questions and the comments in the chat. We look forward to seeing you back in just a few moments. But please take a drink, have a break at the moment, go for a walk if you can. I think we will as well. It's probably a good idea. And we'll see you guys back in about 15 minutes. We'll make it 5:15. It's just about 5 to 5 now, 15, 20 minutes. And we'll see you there soon. Jared, catch you there soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Ciao, guys.
And we're back. Hello, hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Good to see you. Thanks for the break. Hope you had a good break and got your water, got your food, as I am chewing down on now.
Yeah.
Jared, welcome back. So, what have you put together for the map that we're starting to pull together?
Well, we've kind of got our 5, 6 room, 7 room chamber dungeon area that we want our players to explore. So now we get to fill it with all sorts of cool details and dress it up as it would be. So something I like to do to quickly differentiate the rooms is different floor textures. And sometimes I will even go so far as to change the walls for each room. So, would the bed chamber be finished with, carved wooden paneling or something like that? And then there's going to be a way to set that up, and you can draw over what's already there and get really nuanced. But I think we leave these nice stone cut walls, with some of these rooms being flooded, some of them being in a little bit disrepair, or in the case of the laboratory, some wild magical things could be happening. And yeah, each room's going to have its own purpose, so we can just start decorating things and fleshing it out, which is probably my favorite part of. Apart from lighting, like honestly, once all the objects are down, the lighting is also super super fun. So something I might even do quite quickly off the bat is using these path tools that are just strips of shadow, which is really fun. So you can see it'll put like a generic single tone with no gradient to it, but then there's these really cool path tools where once you've figured out which direction they go and how they draw, you can really enhance the texture of a room. Not the texture. What am I thinking of? The depth.
Shadow, the depth.
Yeah. The depth of a room. So this one seems to be drawing a little bit differently to what I'm used to. But yeah, you can quickly give a room a lot of body and a lot of presence.
That's nice. Yeah.
It's pretty quick and easy to sketch something out. This path tool's not jumping on the corner that I want it to. I think it might be because I'm snapping on. I think if I turn
snap to center. Who snap to center or snap to edge?
I don't know. I think you can change it.
It seems to be going from just off the edge of it rather than the center.
That's all right. We can make do. A little bit of trial and error. That's what I also
shadows on the walls.
You always good. Yeah, so suddenly that room pops so much more than these others. So it quickly gives it the depth and feeling that we want to try and achieve. But let's we can throw it to the chat. I can throw it to you. What do we feel like would be in this bed chamber? Is this something that he's, our wizard, has he crafted out a rather nice place for himself, or was he really just looking for a temporary locale?
Good question. Well, let's put it to the chat for all the rooms in any case. So that means if anyone's got any ideas for what you want in these rooms, you've got the bed chamber, the laboratory, the minions chamber that we've got there, the flooded room, what that could have been in the past, and the storeroom, potentially there may be other things in there. Please throw it into the chat for any ideas, and we'll start coming up with what. Love to make it what we can. It will probably evolve as we get the ideas anyway. So. For his bed chamber, do you want to make it that it was never meant to be something that was long term, but it was by necessity he had to carve it out of you, like he was expelled from wherever place or wherever it was that he came from, so he quickly made this together as a refuge, perhaps. So it's and he managed to carve this out, but this was his bedroom, so he never needed it to be necessarily something that was permanent, but this is what he had.
Yeah, I like that. So yeah, just quick chuck down a desk, chuck some papers on it.
Papers and stuff for a desk is fantastic. It's really good. And it's being his bed chamber. It'd be his personal stuff.
Well, that's it. he's not. He's obviously like writing letters of correspondence and things like that to people, but obviously all of his research is going to be sat in the library. Is this his library? Was it a library that, you know, some other great wizard had used and he's now occupied or taken over?
Mm.
Obviously all of his research is sat in the library. Is this his library? Was it a library? Yeah. So if anyone has any ideas in chat, otherwise I'm just going to start throwing objects down.
Anything comes up, I'll let you know. I'll keep an eye on the chat for you for anything that comes to you. So far, nothing yet, so we'll keep an eye out for it. But
Okay.
well, definitely a bed of some kind, or does he have a bed? I mean, was it like a bunk because he was never expecting to be here for a long time or something?
Well, we're gonna quickly use my trick of identifying the colorable assets.
Ah, yes.
So I feel like this, I mean, it would make sense to use a bed chamber that was a bed chamber, right? And then he can put his own eclectic spin on that. It's always fun trying to scale these things as well, because you have to try and think like what looks good, but also what makes sense. So is a bed that is, you know, 10 feet wide, 20 something feet long, ideal? Where would it be?
Well, at least 2 meters. So that's what, 6 to 10 feet. 10 feet could probably work. Yeah.
So we can chuck that down, and yeah, looks a bit lived in. Doesn't quite make his bed up, but this is where I like these assets, because I can chuck a different blanket or something on top. If
That's
I
very
wanted
good.
to, say, have some sheets kind of thrown to the side. But then immediately while I'm in this area, I'm obviously seeing these beds that are a bit more kind of like a cot.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, he could be staying in a cot, but really,
the minions.
He's not going to be as lavish for his minions. So
no.
This is where the scatter tool can be really fun, because I can select a bunch of these and just chuck them down a little bit quicker. But we've got these bad boys, and then we can quickly change the tone and color of these a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I'm putting them on at least user layer 2 or 3. 3 because 2 would let me place objects underneath it, and 1 would let and then 1 would be my shadow layer. So if I did want to come through and do all of that, so we can just start chucking some
beds in there for the minions.
Yeah, random assortments of cots. Now, of course, if his minions were skeletons that he summoned, perhaps they would be maybe just a pile of dirt, or a coffin,
or just alcoves. Just alcoves, are they?
Yeah, just a slab of stone that they once rested in. Could be anything. And then once we've got these, we can obviously go with decorating with some chests. Now I have to get a little bit more precise here. And do these minions have a considerable amount of valuables? But yeah, being able to put it on layer 2 now means I can go on layer 2 and I can put shadow on top of this, but under the bed, rather than just
that's great.
A random thing. So this is where I like to really zoom in and make things look detailed. And then the other thing, just another mental thing that you have to think of with making these maps, and a consideration of use, is, as any dungeon master will know from once you gain enough experience, is if you describe something that's in a room, players are going to want to potentially interact with it.
Yeah,
the classic.
And usually the most innocuous thing that you've described, even though you didn't mean to, it's there, and that could be the thing they pick up on. Yeah,
exactly. So if I go decorating this with all sorts of wooden chests, does that mean I have to prepare loot for all of these chests? Or if I've got this sort of fancier looking box that's on top of this chest of drawers, other players going to want to suddenly interact with that. All sorts of little things that I'm kind of thinking of, because if I put this chest in the middle of the room with a bunch of treasure in it, well, if I don't describe that, players are still gonna, they're either gonna not say anything and question my sanity and be like, well, hang on, why did he put that there and not say anything? Or they're
Mhm.
thinking I'm up to something, which is generally the case.
Yeah.
So all of these like
Yeah.
little considerations, and like this is clearly a mimic. Is it a chest that looks like a mimic, or is it actually a mimic? So
Mm.
you're constantly kind of weighing that up as well, because just like
Mm.
the amount of effort that goes into placing all of these down and picking and selecting stuff, is it necessary? Could I not just say under each of the sort of cobbled together cots that you find were, you know, some chests with personal effects, and then generally the players will be like, okay, well, I want to loot this chest. Do I find anything? And I could just say, well, you kick open all of the chests and you see, you know, a spare set of shoes and some personal rations, perhaps some letters or
Mm.
something.
Mm.
But it really depends what my intention is when I'm chucking all of these down. Do I want there to be I want there to be enough substance to the room, and honestly, where we're at now, not too bad,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
are minions going to have lavish things? Are they going to have lots of storage? Um, but what else do you think would the minions might have? Like, you know,
That's a good
if this
question
was a
because it looks like they've got a
yeah.
kitchen. They've got a kitchen where they get to meet and everything. So this is where they're going to have a break. But maybe where's the entry? Do they come in through into this room from somewhere? Like, how do they get back out into the wider dungeon or caves or wherever it is? What's the access point?
Um, well, look, they've got two fairly straight, short corridors.
Mm.
And I feel like most of these are going to be pretty straightforward. I would say, obviously, the bedchamber for the wizard to his library could be
Yeah.
hidden and secret.
Mm.
Also, perhaps this short corridor could be secret.
Mm.
Um, but the laboratory where we're now, I want to put a doorway here. That
Mm.
could be very, very secret. So in order for the player, let's just
Mm.
say we're thinking the players are coming through this cave section. They're going to come into
Yes.
a flooded chamber. To me,
Mm-hmm.
that immediately puts them on edge. There's history here. Something's happened. This isn't the original purpose. This isn't a bath room, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like a Roman style bath or anything. It's a room that would have some bits of floating wood and debris and things in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's obviously been sectioned off from the library, but now
Yeah.
I have to think how my players are going to flow through here. If the MacGuffin that they want is in the laboratory, I want that
Mm.
completely either sealed off or secreted away. And I want them to
Mm.
explore enough of this. This was about my big challenge when running Ravenloft, was there's
Yeah.
so many cool things that they can go and interact with, and you just don't
Yeah.
know where or how they're going to approach this.
Mm.
Um, are they? And the other thing with Ravenloft is, well, generally we're going to find the vampire dude down in the catacombs or in the dungeons, and he's going to have something hidden away down deep. But
Mm.
by the same token, he could have his coffin up on the highest tippity top tower that's protected by
Yeah.
magic, and you can't fly up to it or do anything. You have to crawl all the way up the tower. So
Mm.
when
I
you
guess
are
that's a
putting the rooms down, yeah, you got to think of their mental process.
absolutely, and I think it's also the player process to be able to get to the places you want them to get to. Because you're absolutely right. Something like Ravenloft and Curse of Strahd game has so much richness in every room, pretty much that you can go into. So it's like you may not have the time. It's like everyone could actually go into every single room and spend years actually investigating the whole place, but you may not have that time. If to make it expedient for this intro kind of like thing, intro kind of mini dungeon, that they come into that room, but which rooms do you think are key for them to be in to go into? And the laboratory sounds like one of them.
Mm.
In fact, that might be the key room you just simply want them to get to. So that means it's then do you provide them hooks in at least one or maybe two of the rooms beyond that'll give them a hint to go look for the laboratory? Is that the kind of key?
I would say so, yeah. Like there's got to be certain things that you could do. So if they completely bypassed, you know, they go straight through the flooded chamber through storage into the minion layer,
Mm,
minions, the barracks, I guess.
yeah.
You could, in one of these footlockers, you could leave a note that says, "Oh well,
Yeah.
I hate I hate that, he made us seal off this wall. It was so much work. Why did we bother doing that? And boom,
Yeah,
you've got a
yeah,
clue.
yeah.
Um,
It's
very,
really
very,
the only two
yeah.
rooms I really need to get to would be the minions room and the bedroom. Probably he might have a hint to getting into the
Mm.
laboratory from there, or or the library, depending on which one you prefer.
It also gets to the point where if they don't pick up any of your clues and you're not doing the what I like to do, which is obviously like semi-permanent ideas of where these objects and clues should be. So if there's something that your
Mm,
players need to find in order to gain access to the laboratory,
mm,
that scrap of paper could be found anywhere. It could have been left on in
yeah,
the dining hall
yeah,
under someone's unfinished breakfast.
yeah.
You got options. You got lots and lots and lots of options, but
That's
I
so
try not
true.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to engineer my dungeons in that way. I probably would
Okay.
prefer to. Mm, I don't know. Like you can make things very clear and you can make them very cryptic, and I like having
Keeping it
the
keeping it
ability to do
flexible sounds
both.
like a good idea.
For sure,
Yeah, yeah,
for
that
sure.
sounds good. GM, good to see you there. Dormitory,
Oh
Midnight
hey,
Feast, absolutely. I like the idea that the wizard actually and his minions get along well, and every now and then they just have a big midnight feast and karaoke in the kitchen area or something like this.
yeah,
That
for
could be
sure.
pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he's got a
So,
good relationship with his minions. And yeah, I feel like this is more of a cooperative team
hmm,
team building. Like they
team,
follow him.
team,
Yeah,
team.
team wizard. And perhaps and that's the other thing is like I think the other assumed thing with a lot of these locations, if it's hidden away and secreted, like I was trying to say before, we don't know that the
Hmm,
wizard wasn't just trying to do something that was maybe not evil and malicious, but perhaps just
hmm.
forbidden. Or
Yeah.
he wanted to make sure that what he was doing didn't harm anyone. I feel like that's such a classic reason for a wizard's tower to exist, is it's like, well,
Hmm. I'm
they do
experimenting.
experiments and crazy shit that calls lightning from the sky at random moments.
Yeah.
You don't want that in the middle of your town. That's
No.
dangerous, man.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good point. That's really cool.
so you can come up with all kinds of lore and reasons why things are here, and
Hmm.
what brought the wizard to this place? Was it because he wanted to have a safe location, or did he feel like, is there a ley line or some perhaps magical, an enhancement or a arcane, maybe only these mushrooms grow in only this room,
Yeah.
as a bit of a
Yeah.
stretch, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, is that why? Is he researching some herbology, or something? There's
Mm.
a fantastic fantasy novel series, the Painted Man series, or the Demon Cycle series, I should say, where the demons come out from the core of Earth and they kind of rise through the Earth when the sun goes down as a mist, and they become
Mm.
these solid creatures. And one of the human settlements and their people and their culture, they do um, their like fortune telling and divination through the bones of these creatures.
Mm.
So obviously these creatures only come out when it's night because you can't expose them to sunlight. And so
Mm.
all of the like even normal light and these bones they will vanish. So the priests and priestesses who craft these bones have to do it completely in the dark, but you have to carve the specific symbols and runes and the wards. That's the main way that magic
Mm.
works in this universe. These wards into them, uh, all blind, all by hand, but they
Mm.
have a method of producing an artificial light that doesn't mess with that.
Cause them
So
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't cause them to break down.
Mm.
Um,
I
but
I
yeah.
just want looking at the laboratory, by the way, I just want to say that the kind of fungal growth kind of all the way
Mm,
through it looks really cool. Like that kind of
mm,
whitish sheen as well across there. So
mm.
yeah, this is fascinating.
Yeah,
But
mm,
I picked up on something because you said like this being a secret wall, the laboratory into the water
mm-hmm.
room there. Um, Online when when you're trying to reveal rooms as well, sometimes I find it just being making sure that you don't reveal too much of a room so it gives away that there's a room next to it or that there's a secret entry across, and just making sure on your map that you are very clear of those kind of lines so that it does mean you can keep that nice reveal later on, instead of actually accidentally showing that there's a secret door there or something like that. That
Yeah,
took a while to get used to.
the fog of war stuff's pretty. I mean, even if you were to look at this, if I were to cut off, you know, if I just kind of chuck that there, because of the way that I placed that wall underneath the pre-generated stuff, you can see some puckeries going down. So
Yeah.
like, despite my my blatant sign that I chucked down, yeah, like you can get creative with that, and sometimes you do have to be careful if you're doing something deliberate. So a little bit of sort of forethought and engineering needs to come through before you execute an idea. So we've gone into this very loose and fast. So I like that for what we're doing here, because now my options are completely open and leave things for me to just chuck some objects down. So we've already got a cool kind of evil looking book that's on this slab. Yep. And then we can decorate this and we can really get into it. So if I go like potion or something, suddenly I've got a cool clay pot. We scroll down, we've got some colorized ones that we can do things with.
That's great. So many options. Yeah.
And you know,
bouquet of flowers. Yeah.
And this is what I'm thinking is it's a little bit herbology, a little bit of alchemy kind of a thing. And now we've got a bunch of little bottles of mysterious liquids. I want to turn the shadows off because again, I would actually go right in on this. And I thought that was a mortar and pestle. It's a broken bottle. Oh, no, it's just a bottle of champagne and ice. I thought that was something else. And then we might chuck this milk container down there, just as kind of I call them like scatter objects. Like they're just objects that just fill out a room, add some flair and stuff. So yeah. Now I can't because I chucked this slab and these objects down on the same layer. I can't chuck shadows under them, even though I'd like to do that. But that's fine. That's fine. We're just doing things a little bit loose and fast. So all right, so he's got some herbs and some reagents there. A lever action rifle. But as you can see, here, because I searched potions, it's a cart that's pre-established with a bunch of these assets and objects on there.
That's very handy. Yeah.
But yeah.
So there's some good assets if you've got little time just to be able to pull a bunch of things together. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Is that a brazier, like an unlit brazier at the end of the room, or like a fire pit?
Yeah, I just figured a fire pit. Like, just why not have? You know, he's gonna have a heat source there for this cold room. If he wanted to bring, like, we could now actually fill that out a little bit more. So if I type pot, as in a specific cooking pot, perhaps we might find something, or here we go. And if we find a nice layer to chuck it on.
I just love that it's kind of feeling like it's turning into his secret laboratory is actually about ways to make amazing fungi recipes, and he's not letting anyone else in on it. This is it, and it's forbidden in the upper lands. This is it.
Yeah. Nobody cares for mushrooms. They don't understand them. They're underdark food. Nobody cares. And he's thinking, how can I make this palatable?
Yeah.
For sure.
That's great.
For sure. Well, in that case, the lab is now turning into a kitchen. So I can look for kitchen assets, and this, like, someone's really taken the time to make some freaking incredible art. So I've got everything from like a skimmer, or what we'd call a spider, to tongs, to whisks.
Oh wow!
Like, we can really. So this is perhaps the sample dining.
Oh, for the dining room. Yeah, that can be. Yeah. Oh, okay.
We can chuck this in the dining room. Like, it's not a bad.
Yeah.
But if we really wanted to, like, I could engineer a whole, like, the table and then all of the plates and all of the cutlery.
Individually.
So, yeah. I like these loose and fast sort of dining spaces like this. And that's where everyone kind of hangs out. Super duper.
Yep.
But that's the other thing, is you'll go through these lists of objects, and you'll find objects that suit another location very, very quickly, which I love. Like this
Mm.
metal grey hook might not suit here, but it would be really cool if we had a torture chamber, for example,
Mm. I
or a
was kind of wondering
dungeon.
if this, what you were thinking was the storage chamber. I kind of thought, was that their prison or, torture chamber or something like that? But who knows? So, or where they try out the recipes on new people and say, yeah, you're going to have this and we're going to see what it's like.
Shackle them to the walls.
That's
Um,
it. Oh, barrels galore. Wow.
yeah, love all the um, crates and all of this sort of stuff. This is always fun
Mm.
to um, layer crate. So I'll just kind of give like I might actually do an actual specific example of how my layering and shadowing process comes through.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So yeah, so we'll go on layer 3, which lets me play. Actually, for this one, we're going to do 2 because that's going to be
Mm.
my
The bottom
object
layer.
on the ground.
Mm.
We'll put a slightly different size container next to it,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll put a on the next layer above. We'll chuck a basket and maybe a just a lid for a crate, and then I obviously like I'm getting a
Very
little bit
cool.
quicker with placing things down now because I've done this sort of thing a few
Many
times.
times. Yeah.
Another suit. I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but I promise I'll come back. Under the pathing tools,
Mm.
there's like rope, and I probably couldn't find it right now. But one of my favorite things is the rope pathing tool because then I could like lash this barrel down, for example. Like I've just got a bit of carpet through
Mm.
here, but you could like lash a barrel down. But let's not get too distracted too quickly.
Mm.
So I've chucked all of that rope and stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm.
and now I'll go into shadow. I'll be nice and precise because I don't really want all these trees and stuff.
Mm.
But I want let's go 40% shadow. And on my 200 layer, it's going to immediately place it underneath these crates on the ground. So I'll chuck some
Mm-hmm.
scattered shadow there. I'll chuck it under this
Mm-hmm.
barrel. That's popping it away
Mm.
from the background. And then
Yeah.
if I go over, I can now chuck a little bit of shadow towards the back of it. And
Mm.
then I need to go, but I can chuck a little bit under this crate here because that's going to be a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
Now that separates that object from the thing
The one
underneath.
below it. Yeah. That's very
And then,
handy.
yeah, and then finally on top, a little bit of toning. And suddenly this whole thing just sinks into the background a little bit. And there are even the opposite of this. I think it's a path tool,
Mm-hmm.
which is lighting, which is super, super cool that I can edge highlight stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm probably not going to be able to find it now. But again, I will go in and pick the asset packs that actually really, really suit what I'm trying to do rather
Mm-hmm.
than fumble through and guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, ratchet strap horizontal, for example, is what I would have if I chuck this on a layer over the top of this barrel. No, I must have placed this barrel pretty damn high.
Mm.
But yeah, this is like a mechanical ratchet strap that's used for sci-fi stuff. But as you can see, I can lash something down with it.
That's
I don't
very
think I
cool.
can. I don't think I can find my highlight edge, but that's okay.
Mm.
But it's options. You have all these options to get really nuanced. So storage could be as simple as this, but we can keep
Mm.
going. We can keep going.
Yeah, add a few more things there. But I think that's good to note that you've got so many choices. Like the more you use it and the more you get to understand, the easier it will be to fill out a place and also give it a bit of depth and something that makes sense as well, because you'll know what you can draw from. So that's pretty good.
That's it. Opening up your options. Now, if I obviously start putting things down like a rack of pickaxes,
And
I'm
weapons, yeah.
starting. Yeah, so this is more of an eclectic mix of random weapons. So it's everything
Mm.
from a pickaxe to what looks like maybe a hoe and a warhammer or something, and then there's just a staff and a stave and a
Mm-hmm.
mace. So that's just a weapon rack that
That's
has
great.
some equipment on it.
Mm.
But obviously, I could just have a blank one that fills another wall here, so we can chuck that one
Mm.
there, and then Yeah,
Yeah, I
maybe
like them. I
some.
like the ones with mixed things on it. It looks really good.
Mm,
Yeah, that's
and I
good.
think I could even go in nuanced even more and type weapon, and it'll obviously give me far more
Oh
detailed weapon
wow,
racks. So I could have an entire
spheres.
stack of spears and javelins that I just chuck down on top of this, or a weapon display.
Mm,
Um,
that's
but it
cool.
should give me, there we go. So that stuff that is part of this object,
Mm.
I can now grab. And if I wanted to, if I really, really wanted to put one down on this rack, there it is.
Mm.
Or if there's something that wasn't there, yeah, just like a bunch of more sort of staves
Mm.
and mace-like things. Is this also a training? We're turning it into the bloody war room here.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, a lot less
Having
peaceful
that.
than Mushroom Man, but yeah,
They
you
got to
get the
train
idea.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the idea.
Mm.
That, but I like the fact that this is kind of a mix of objects. Like there are some weapons because in this kind of world, perhaps these minions would want to have something to defend themselves, and if need
Yeah.
be. But then there's also these like tools here. There's these picks
Mm.
and hammers and stuff. So
They're
was this
digging.
originally? Yeah, was this all a dwarven mining post or something initially? And
Mm.
it's obviously been taken over, and um, or maybe they just they grab this bundle of spears as a raid on a caravan. They have no intention of
Yeah.
using it, but they want to sell them on, or they're just storing them. So who knows?
It looks
So,
very
so many
cool.
ideas. Yeah.
Can you put that target you've currently got on into their bedroom, into the minions room? It's like what they do in their
Hell's
spare
yeah.
time.
Hell's yeah. Right next to the door. No. Yeah.
If they don't like who's coming in, that's it.
Well, that's it. I mean, we can flesh this out, right? So why would they not want to have? It's nice to actually have like a place to just sit around
A
and
rec room. Yeah.
yeah, like they've got a little bit of a rec room. You don't want to really use the dining room because apparently that's where the
Mm,
ultimate recipes get tested.
yeah.
Um,
This is where they play cards. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Oh, you want to get me started on the cards? I think there is. Yeah, if we go in, like, there's a card box,
Oh, you're
and
kidding. That's
there
awesome.
are some cards that go down, and it's not like it's that much. That's the thing, right? Is having the ideas is one aspect. Knowing that there are resources to make that come to life, and then there's the nuance of
Mm,
polishing and refine. What I like to call the polishing process, which is going in, shadowing everything,
yeah.
layering it up. Yeah, super fun. If I wanted to um, do all of that, so yeah. Grab a
Excellent.
chair. Grab some chairs. Chuck them on a different layout. Something a bit more straightforward. Um,
Mm. So this is where it'd be layer 2, I think. Is that right for these guys?
yeah. So I want to chuck this
That's
on layer
very
two.
nice.
Change the scale. Grab a couple of different ones because again, this has been put together.
Yeah,
Um,
ramshackle.
kind of randomly. So they'll do that. Someone, you'll have a dartboard
Yeah,
over there.
that's cool.
Yeah, and maybe some decorations for the floor. Now we could either go with like, we
A
could
big
run
rug.
a carpet or something. We could have a didn't do it. No, rug.
Ah, yeah, animal skin. Or are
Yeah.
they a bit more upmarket? Are they a bit more upmarket?
I don't know. Like would they just have something for the sake of it?
That's their throw
Um
area.
yeah, let's chuck it down. And then yeah, my brain is immediately like, okay, put shadow on top and underneath it, make it look better.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does look
Mm-hmm.
pretty flat. But yeah, you
Do
can
they have a heat
if
source
somebody
and a light
does.
source?
Yeah, like if somebody does
Or,
really want to know how to get into the insane levels of crafting with Dungeon Draft, Bailey Wiki on YouTube. Check out his
Bailey
tutorials because
Wiki.
yeah, Bailey Wiki.
Okay.
He just has some insane stuff, and then when he combines that with Foundry,
Mm.
it's bonkers. It's utterly bonkers what he's achieved with that sort of stuff. Um, and it's very cool knowing that all of
That's
these things
awesome.
are possible. So yeah, let's chart. find it really
Uh, bit
quickly
of
here. So,
shadows.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll do a subtle one to
Under
pop
the.
that off. I'll put
Mhm.
it on top of that, and then that's pretty much sorted that out. And then I
Mm.
really just want to take the edge off this guy. So I will try and pick my lightest
Mm.
one, and I'll just come through and do that. And then while I've got the tool in hand, I'll darken
Go
the
under the beds.
edges
Yeah,
of these. You know,
that's great.
that's standing out quite a lot. Come through, darken that, because again, like this is the top of something. It's not going to have as much light on it either.
Mm.
A little bit of something under there. So suddenly
It's
there's
great.
a lot more depth to the room. But there's
Mm.
something else I love to do, which is grunge things up.
Mm.
Get some grunge and dirt down. Now this obviously looks a bit ridiculous being this weird sickly green color. But if we
Mm.
immediately make it a dirt color,
Yeah.
it, like you really have to go quite dark.
Mm.
But there's
And it just gives like that's great.
yeah, so there's lots of dirt and textures that you can do. I'm wondering if it's not a tile texture that I'm thinking of. I think it is. So the
Mm.
material brush is not what I'm
So it's a
thinking
bit like
of.
dirty
Pattern shape
tile.
tool. So yeah, you'll see Bailey Wiki get really insane with the pattern shape tool, because even though I could literally just chuck down an area of stone on top, it doesn't quite look right.
No,
But
no.
what he will do is create his own, like if that carpet didn't suit him, if that asset wasn't exactly what he wanted, he would
Mm.
kind of go through and be like, all right, where's my carpet texture? Okay, well, I want a heart-shaped carpet. So he would go in
Mm.
and make a heart-shaped carpet, but now that looks
Mm.
really flat. So then he would go into the pathing tool.
Mm.
And I think I had grabbed a path tool that was a carpet edge. This is engine light something or other. And it's not going to work because I've got edges doing weird things and clipping, but
Mm. I see what you're trying to do. Yeah, that looks
you
very
can
cool.
get super freeform and super, super specific. So he will do that and he'll like craft his own stairs and stuff out of things. Um,
What
and
kind
yeah,
of
if he
dormitory
wants
is this?
if he wants a specific carpet, he'll make it happen, which is very, very cool, and I respect it. But yeah, you can really, really get nuanced. I think what I'm looking for
As you're
is
looking
the
for that,
pattern
welcome
shape.
to.
Yeah,
Thank you, OMGM, for your silly thoughts as well. What we should add, and hello to cigarettes and milk. Hello, son. Hey, Dad. I guess. Hi, good to see you. We're actually looking
yeah.
at the rooms when we're building up these rooms for anyone who's out there. Again, we're still accepting some ideas for what could be inside these rooms. Still got the bedroom and the library really to fill out too. So any ideas for those in particular would be really great. So yeah, but this is looking pretty good.
One of my favorite textures for the pattern shape tool are these ones that fill in these square rooms. So there's this grout one, this sort of darker one,
Mm.
and then this is just fantastic because obviously over time these tiles do not retain their uniformity. Some of them are going to wear quicker than others. Some of them are going to sink into the ground more than others. And this texture just
Oh,
quickly
lovely.
changes the dynamic of an area, which is so wonderful. And they've even got these off square grids for other ones.
Is that like a randomizer as well? So each one's slightly different. Is that right?
It's tiled, so it is a repeating pattern, but
okay.
they've got it sorted. Like that is meant for this. It's part of the same artist. And then
it looks great.
Another cool. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like this blue slate, not really bedroom. Not really bedroom stuff. So we can go in with a timber flooring. Now,
yes.
what I'm actually doing, because I've already put down that blue layer. If I put this down, I've actually got 2 layers now. So you can see just here,
Yep.
I didn't quite catch it. So you can move these. Once I've placed this squarish bit of texture down, I can go through and move it and change it and colorize it and do stuff. So I've got the original one that was down with that floor. I've got the blue one that we've been mucking around with. Which is really nice to know that you're not eliminating your work. Speaking of which, we're going to save now. And we're going to do
good idea.
Stream Dungeon. I'm going to quickly just save that just in case. But now that we've got this wood, I'm vibing with this more. And if we go back to the pattern shape tool, basically half did this because I just wanted to show off the damage textures. So this has got some history to it. We're going to chuck in some subtle scratches into the floor.
Oh, very nice.
Very, very cool. And maybe another different one to
Oh, wow.
give it an odd. I don't think that's meant. Yeah. I wanted this one. I wanted the vertical one that ran with the grains of the wood.
Yeah.
So it just darkens things, tones things down. There is the pattern shape tool that is just shadow. But Pebbles overlay, super fun. Really just fills out a room. Just makes it look a little bit used. Probably not in the library, that might get swept up, but laboratory room, super cool. Boom. Just chuck some pebbles down.
Oh, nice.
Maybe they're a little bit dark. Or we could actually just make them subtly blue, because I think we got a little bit of a bluish tone to the room. And if I didn't tell you they were there, you probably wouldn't have noticed, but I can, you know, make them appear and reappear. But it is, there's a lot of art that you don't notice things, but you'd notice if they weren't there, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that just adds another dimension to that, whereas all of these textures do look incredibly flat to begin with, and you can always build and build and build and build.
That's right. Well, we're getting ready about to start looking at those other rooms, but something that's I've been thinking about, particularly when you're looking at rooms that are a battle map like this, and you can see we've got a grid of like square grid across the entire place. How much, like some of the rooms, because of the work that you've done on them as well, the grid started to disappear. So is that something that you would think about later on as well, particularly if you're going to be using miniatures or the movement for some D&D games?
Yeah. So we've covered the beginning. Ooh, sorry if I just smacked the mic and made everyone go deaf. You really got to think of that in terms of the export settings. So just for those who weren't here at the beginning of the stream, when you are making one, we're gonna save our changes. You do need to think whether you're projecting it onto a TV, if you're using a virtual tabletop, or if you're going to print them. So if I was going to print these, I don't have the luxury of having my virtual tabletop with a built-in overlay, or if I'm just or if I'm using Chromecast, or just plugging in my laptop to a TV or a projector or something. If I'm not using a virtual tabletop application, I need to think of that, because it's not going to necessarily be easy once you're in this chamber, for example, or the flooded chamber, if I turned off the grid. Now I can just turn off the grid completely, and I like those feel for these sorts of rooms. But again, when you're engineering this and deciding its purpose, a battle map generally will need a grid. You can run gridless, it's absolutely an option, but that's a great question, because also when I'm exporting it, I can turn that grid on or off. So I can use it for my purposes to create it and give me measurements, just like the grid and the snapping, also very, very useful. But I can immediately change the lighting. I can soften the focus. So something useful when I'm doing, like I mentioned in our pre-stream ramble, when I was making an airship battle map, I did it in many layers. And then I exported a whole new one, the same map size. I created a whole new one and then combined them in Photoshop to make a softened environment below all of the terrain that was below the airship. And so I did a layer that was not so easy to do all in one swing, but I created the airship. I created 3 of those for 3 different decks, the top, middle, and bottom deck. And then they all sat on their own sections in a bigger page. And then in that page, I created a cloud layer, just using Photoshop. And then I used the same assets for this, and I threw that into a soft focus so that it was much, much further down. You can have an overlay level. Now, this is also fun, the printer settings. So we're obviously dealing with full color, beautiful assets that, you know, down to the minutiae on the back of these cards. But let's say I did want to make it for a printer and I wanted to print it at home, and all I needed the functionality of a battle map, which I absolutely love. So this suddenly takes a lot of it out. And now the problem is because there's light and dark and things, we have to tweak some stuff. So I'd have to lower the brightness. But this looks great as a prop to hand out. It's printer friendly for black and white. And yeah, works really, really well. I generally, um, and then the sepia one as well. Very, very cool for
Mm,
handouts. Super,
yeah,
super cool for handouts.
I've used those for as if it's like a piece of parchment that people have actually received, so it keeps it very simple,
Yeah,
and it does look very good.
very, very cool. Because again, if I just want something that is representative, or like you guys are kind of going through these areas, that's also very cool because it feels like maybe they're following a map. Um, but I don't necessarily want them to look at how each bed is a different color, or whether the chests are detailed enough for them to be worried about it. And then the grid presets it's assuming, again, because I've set this up for virtual tabletop.
Mhm.
But I love that it actually gives you these options. So I can go best quality, it'll print in PPI, which is pixels per inch. So these are all your
Mm,
printing options. So now my output is 10,000 by 8,000 pixels if I choose the best quality.
yeah.
I don't know when that's ever going to be necessary. Um, it's very, very good how it just gives you these options. So optimal halved lowers that, so you just what would be normal commercial print, which is 300 PPI, um, which will give you just a fine resolution on normal printers for all of that sort of thing. Because then you can also print at the right scale. Roll20, they operate with 70 pixels per inch. So if you import this
Mhm.
straight into Roll20 or Foundry or something like that, they have a default
Mm,
of 7 PPI. And then again, if you chose the 50 or the 40 or 50-inch TV options, this is going to give you a much more realistic output as well. So
mm.
you don't want to ever go too small or to a lower resolution, because you're just going to lose things. And then when you do need to make them bigger, they're not going to be as clear. But it gives you a lot
Mm.
of options, and I can actually kind of throw this quality slider up. I can transform it into universal VTT,
Mhm.
and then this will give me grid on or off. Now, even if I turn it off, it'll still have the data for the right PPI. So if
Yep.
I've chosen, you see here now, it's defaulted to Roll20 at 70 because I want a virtual
It's
tabletop
VTT.
format.
Yeah.
And I can chuck the grid on and off. I can chuck my lighting layer on and off. But yeah, very, very fun. Very, very cool to be able to go in, operate with a grid, turn it off if I want to.
Mm. Very
Um,
dynamic. Yeah.
yeah, because in Foundry, I will use, again, like in Foundry, if I use a darker grid, that might not show up in the lab. Um,
Mhm.
but if I use a lighter grid, it might not show up in the dining area. So you can always chop and change on the fly with things like Foundry and Roll20,
Mm.
to make it suit what you need. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's very,
Lots of
very cool.
functionality. This is very good. So,
Mm.
what shall we work on next with a bit of time? Because we've got about just under half an hour to go, actually.
Mhm.
So, to kind of finish off here, what would you like to work on? One of the rooms, detail some of the ones we've already done, or really build on the couple of
I
rooms
mean,
that
we can put some. Let's put
Sloan
some
did?
doors. Yeah, we can put some doors down.
Yeah.
So I'll need to go. I think I need to go into the object layer because I'm not 100% sure, but we'll test it. If I do
Mhm.
use the portal tool, yeah, you see how it won't actually let me block off these chambers because it'll only go on a wall. So
Yes.
even this one section of wall, it doesn't
Mm.
really want to let me place it down. It's sort of flashing there when it thinks I can place it down, but anything that I
Mm.
have a considerable amount of space, it'll work just fine. So for my secret wall
Okay.
here, I can chuck down a
Mm.
door, but that does not mean you're restricted, because, as I like to do with these specifically crafted halls and corridors and things,
Mm.
you can just place objects down.
Yeah.
So I'm already getting an
Yeah.
idea for, where's our object gone? Oh no,
Mm.
we're still on the
You're
portal
still in
tool.
that mode, I think.
I'm still
Yeah.
I'm
On the
still
wall
there.
one.
There we go. Um, but yeah,
Mm.
all sorts of fun things. Now our dungeon's 2
Nice.
layers deep. Um, but
I like this. Yeah,
yeah,
stairs from the library. This goes into the lower library. The occult chef texts.
the
That's
restricted section. Um, so what I'll need to do with these is be kind of nuanced, because um, when it comes to placing these down, if I place them on anything other than above walls, they're always going to be cut off
Mm.
slightly.
Yeah.
So you'll also learn over time that you can place certain things down around walls, but they're not always going to be perfect. So I
Mm.
don't know what kind of doors do we want, because we can do heavy metal, we can do stone and wood, we can
Mm.
just do reinforced wood that's rusty, or but I mean that's also like when you get into the real nuance. There's obviously going to be a
Mm.
rusty door on the flooded chamber, but maybe the
I
one to
think
the
so.
dining area is the exact same door, just not rusty. So,
Yeah, that sounds
uh,
like a good idea. Yeah,
yeah,
go with
so
that.
we can just chuck a portal down. And now I like doing that because it also just immediately breaks up that weird floor transition.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
any of these
definitely.
strange, abrupt floor transitions
Hmm.
don't always work. So now we've got same door. Um, now I've accidentally popped on some sort of a grid or something here.
Yeah.
Yeah, chucked on a. So that's another cool thing that it has is this measured point, so you can actually pinpoint exactly what coordinates you're on in a map. Is very very useful, especially
Hmm.
if you're working on a big project, because
Hmm.
um, you will need to know, like, if you're going in and doing these colors and stuff, you need these hex codes. Like if I'm doing a big
Yeah.
project and across multiple rooms and I want the tone of the floor to be exactly the same and I haven't had the forethought to plan all of it out,
Mm.
sometimes it's good to just have a little notepad open and chuck all of your hex codes into it, or something like Notion, where you can not
Mm.
only put a little bit of text there, but then you can quickly do a Windows snip tool
A sample.
sample. So you can go, right, that room
Mm.
works there. This is the color I use for the floor. Um, so it'd be kind of cool if there was like maybe an inspect, like you could hold a button and it would inspect and give up all the details of that floor, what
Like
it's
a get
called.
info kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be really cool, I think.
Mm.
But now we can start embellishing a little bit.
Hmm.
We're getting sci-fi with the the doors here.
Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, just some darker wood. Um, where are the ones that have the ends on them? That's what I'm.
Mm.
So, like if we zoom right down into this, we need to put this to scale, which works
Hmm.
just fine about here. And then
Hmm.
I might come in and do something like this, but I'll put this. So we're getting really really pedantic
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
with our stuff here, but I like to just think that that has some fastening to the wall,
Jams.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like it's
A
you
frame.
can
A frame.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can really get into it, but once you've actually brought it down to scale, I know that I'm going to want to put that all on all of my other doors. So that's cool. And then I get the object grab tool and I can go paste a couple of these doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the asset grabbing that I like to do ahead of time. Um, Generally really really useful for stuff like doorways and things that I'm going to repeat and use multiple times.
Mm.
It's always a very very good idea. So we've got our storage room with all of its doors. This one runs off to the lab room.
Mm.
We're going to need a pretty
Solid door for that one.
solid door. Large wood with metal on both sides. Um, I also generally in Dungeon Draft I'll avoid small one by one corridors that have these thick walls.
Mm. Yeah.
It's just another bit of a tip, because you run out of space very quickly. I don't like single corridor things in dungeons generally. I know that
Hmm.
they're absolutely wide enough to serve a purpose, but like, let's say I put that door down, it looks a little funny, and maybe I want to put a lantern or a sconce or something in there, so
Mm.
we can put some light. Let's get a bit more specific.
Say lantern.
So the problem
Yeah.
is I've used light, and it's giving me all of the light wood
Yeah.
objects. So
Lantern.
if I
If you
go
type in lantern,
lighting,
lighting.
so yeah, if we've just got a sconce, and I need it because the thing is it really going to be, so obviously we use a 5 foot per grid in
Yeah.
D&D, and I have to think now, well, this sconce is now like a foot. It's almost a foot. It's half a foot. That's pretty big. sconce. But if I make it to scale, like you're not even going to see that when you're crawling through that, you miss
Yeah,
that completely. So
it's symbolic. Yeah,
yeah, like sometimes it's symbolic, but what if we did
it's a nice
classic
juggling act,
torsos?
isn't it? That kind of
Yeah,
like a balancing act. But
yeah, for
realism
sure.
versus will look. I want you to know that there's actually sponsors along the way you can light up. So, um, and so making it larger to fit that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So we can go a very short range but quite intense glow if we wanted to. And you can see how it does do, it's smart about the walls because when I
Mm,
export that to a virtual tabletop, it will cut off line of sight, it'll cut off the lighting, which I really, really love.
mm.
I really, really love that it does that. It's very smart about it. So we've chucked our sconce down there. Now we have a little bit of
Mhm.
lighting. We might just sort of slowly wrap up with a little bit of polish and lighting, I guess.
That's a good
Um,
idea.
yeah. So I like to
That's a
build
really
rooms.
cool lighting effect you've got on at the moment.
Mm, keep things subtle because again, like I don't need to put a candelabra or something in here, but maybe there is a candle. Not everything's going to be torch mounted.
Mm.
We can quickly chuck a candle specifically.
Like a
Um,
what's it called? A candle, multi stack candle stick or whatever it is.
hmm, um, little
Oh, that's
cluster
a
of
nice
candles.
array
Yeah,
cluster. That's a
nice,
good word for it.
nice little cluster of candles. Super intense little area
Mm.
of light. Boom. Um, and I love these magic sort of lighting effects as well.
Mm.
They are so so cool for like flooding an area with odd light.
Like a
Um,
chandelier above there or something. Yeah,
yeah, or like this
that's cool.
scattered light. This is very cool for sci-fi and stuff. Like if there's,
Yeah.
if the I just immediately imagine a player character plastered to the top of this this glass big window in the ceiling of something. But
Mm.
yeah, we could fill most of the room with an off textured lighting
Mm.
if we wanted to. So
That's
many
very
cool
cool.
options. So many cool options. Some of the magic
Oh,
stuff's
that's
really
nice.
cool as well.
Mm.
We could have just that around the table. That's whatever sort of weird refractions and stuff from the chandelier that's above their
Chandelier
table
above.
gets
Yeah, that's very
passed
cool.
down. Yeah.
I like that this
So
wizard spares no expense for his minions with his
yeah,
chandelier work. I think that's
yeah.
good.
He's a simple man with a bed and a desk. But the minions live it up. Yeah.
That's cool.
Suddenly it comes to life, which is very cool. But again, like
Ah,
just the general ambient light we can tweak and change.
can we, if we're doing light, can
Mm,
we, with being in the Underdark as well, can we go to the fungus room and have some phosphorescent fungus around there
oh
as
yeah,
well?
no, yeah. Let's decorate this for sure. So what I might actually do is just do plant, and then I'm going to use
Mm.
my binding colorables trick.
Super
Oops,
green,
that's not
iridescent
not
green.
yeah. So this will show me where the colorables are, but again, like it doesn't even need to be fungi. We could have some cool, weird purple
Mm.
blue things, this random sort of stuff. But if we do choose, I know that there are some like pretty neon
Mm.
mushrooms around. Can't find them now, of course.
Fungi.
There
Oh,
we
there
go.
you go. Beautiful. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. It's a bit like
So that,
lichen.
yeah. So we can have some random ingredient chucked there. But yeah, let's go into light tool. Let's choose and lighting really makes a room come to life.
Mm. Mm.
I've also noticed that like, this guy, for example, if we
Mm.
chocked some orange scatter light like right on there, it doesn't quite work.
Mm.
But I was thinking maybe each of those could have and we could get real sticky with it. But maybe he lets
Mm.
off a little bit of an orange glow. I think I put another one. No, I didn't put any. So that one has a little orange glow.
Mm.
The general tone of the room could
You did
be
further
a
south.
much.
If you further below him, there is
Oh
one
yeah, cool.
hiding away just down there.
I'll just chuck a little softies. But then the general
Very
tone of the
cool.
room could be quite a cool sort of
Underdarky glow.
a cool
Like
blue.
a
Now obviously we've got a fire going on over
mm.
here,
Oh
so
yeah.
an intense orange heat.
Mm. Oh, you
Again,
got a 90-degree. Yeah.
the lighting's gonna be a little bit funny. We're gonna click on it, and that's to rotate. There we
Yep.
go.
Nice.
And if that's just coming off the front edge of it, and we shrink it down so it's the right. Oh no, that's not. That's the scale.
Mm-hmm.
We go in there. We just put a soft glow out of the front of it. It's very subtle. Oh, hello. Are we running out of time, sir?
No, we got 15. We got 15. We're doing well.
Great.
All right. So yeah, that looks good. That's about that brightness looks pretty good.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted. Rotate it. Stick it. There we go. And then we come
nice
back
oven going.
Yeah, so now you can imagine that there's light spilling out from the fire underneath. That's where you would stoke it and do things like that. But yeah, the environmental lighting, I think, yeah, if we're in the Underdark, there would be a general tone of maybe not quite as blue, but just enough to take the edge off. And then it darkens everything slightly as well. So now this actually pops a little bit more. These guys are doing their thing. So you want to start with an ambient light that is a little bit tonal and overall setting the mood. You know, if we were in the Matrix, everything would be you know, slightly Matrix green, for example.
Color graded screens. That's right. Yeah.
Like if there's one thing we can take from film in all of this as visual elements, it's you know, people do colorize things very differently. Depending, and now we go back to our minions room and it looks different.
That looks very cool. Yeah.
So
that's so good.
It's fun to work with the light and stuff. So yeah. Or here, you know.
Oh, that's good for the watery room. Yeah.
Right. There's a crack in the ceiling that's letting some manner of organic light through. That causes scatter on the water's surface. So what we've built up with the flooded chamber as me just kind of doing random things as we've been building things is we've got our lighting layer, and then I've been actually we don't need that one anymore. We don't actually need these layers of dirt. I don't know why I can't delete them, but I've got the tile layer. I've got another watered layer over the top because I didn't think this quite did the trick.
Good job. Yeah.
And so that's been built up in many layers, which is probably one of my favorite things to do is layer these textures and stuff.
Yeah. To bring it to life. That's definitely
for sure. Because you can get really let's try a slightly more simple shape. But yeah, something like this, you could then get real painstaking and draw like a different tone of water on top. If you then take the pattern shape tool and we need the circle tool. So we'll do the circle tool. Now you can't see it because it's all on the wrong flipping layer.
Yeah.
No, it's not wanting to do it.
Yeah. Can you change layers on objects? Can you actually shift them up and down layers? Yep. Okay, good.
You can. So now I've set that to low water, which is not where our actual water layer is. But then I can take this and put this in here. And now I've actually got my basin of slightly different water from what I wanted before.
Mm,
Super, super fun technique to be able to layer those things and make things happen. Um,
mm,
and then if we wanted to put all of this on a raised platform, for example,
mm,
I just want to show how you could do that. So if we took a rather flat stone and we made a rough square out of it, and then we take our path tool with shadow edges.
mm.
Oops. So we're just going to be raising that up ever so slightly. But then we can draw in, oops.
Some
You have
shadow.
to go,
Yeah.
you have to go a certain direction with these. So if I do sort of
That's
slide
nice,
down a little bit of an incline,
like a beveled
it's,
edge or something.
yeah, now it looks like a beveled edge, and all that is actually putting shadowed with a taper on it in the right
Mm,
place. Now that looks somewhat carved out,
mm,
and assuming we put everything on the right layer, we'll chuck that up a little bit higher. Put
mm.
that there. This I think is already on the correct layer. You just have to move it. No, it's not. But yeah, we've kind of crafted a bezeled looking layer. We could grab that
Mm,
stair tool as an example.
mm.
These stair shadows that we've had a little bit of that we looked at in the beginning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, or we could chuck on the
Yeah,
corners.
corner one. That's cool. And just replicate that. Well, as you're doing these final kind of like looks at it, because we, yeah, just about
Mm,
coming to time to look over in the next a few minutes as we wrap up.
mm,
What if you had more time
mm,
to work on this particular map as well? What would be
mm.
the kind of things you'd be looking at doing?
Um, Again, probably like using these. It's really about polishing. So my workflow is obviously the space that we're using, defining the boundaries of that, putting in a floor and walls that make sense for the purposes of if it's especially if it's a building.
Yeah.
So choosing the right walling, like I said, we could have a nice cut stone wall all around this, but for the bed
Mm,
chamber, I could choose a paneled wall or a plastered wall. So we can go into that. Then placing down objects that make sense, separating them from the background, and also giving them a tonality so that they don't pop too much. They sink into, yeah, you want to separate it from the background, but then let it settle in terms of what's visually catching the eye and where it's moving around.
mm,
Um, and then you can do what I like to call polishing, which is adding these. I very, very quickly, once I've got my walls and flooring, I put the shadows around the walls to separate them and give
yep.
each space its own feel.
Mm,
And then I would go in with lighting and shadow to just edge things, to bring attention to certain things, soften other things. Because now I feel like when we walk into this minions room, there are a couple of things that catch my eye, which is obviously the well lit object or piece
mm,
of furniture in the room, which is this card table. So if I
mm,
now wanted the clue for where the lab is secreted away, or what the
mm,
combination to the lock is, or whatever it might be,
mm.
I can quickly, very intentfully,
Intensely, yeah.
direct, yeah, intently direct my players' attention to those areas of the map. They don't need to wander down the back of the chamber, but now
Mm,
as I look at this space through a dungeon master's eyes, I'm thinking, well, there's enough room for a combat to break out here.
mm.
Um, and is it challenging enough with is there enough objects for people to hide behind and do fun things with? Obviously, this light indicates a chandelier, so of course someone's going to try and swing from it for no particular reason other than the rule of cool.
Because they can.
So yeah, so that's the thing
Hey,
is I
it's right.
think
It's right under the table, so it's easy to do. That's a good
that's it.
idea.
That's it. But then I also might now look at it and be like, well, I kind of just threw that table there, but the chandelier wouldn't have been built there. Um, so I might start moving things around. But it's
Mm,
always, I guess, it's always this dance in your mind between what do I want this to be? How can I decorate it to make it so? and then you're kind of doing this back and forth with yourself between what serves function, what serves form. Thank you so much for the follow. Whoa, hang on. Mocartrax.
Yes.
Cosmocartrax. It's actually easier to say than it
Woo.
looks. Thank you so much for the follow. We are unfortunately wrapping things up, but just talking through my mental process in terms of, you know, you're flipping between having an idea of what you want to achieve, what you want, you know, is it a, like we started with, is it a reference map? Is it a battle map? Could it be both? I generally build maps for areas that the players are going to explore that combat could break out in, but not necessarily. I find it always fun to decorate things, whether or not the players even go into that room. It'll just make sense to me, and then it's also kind of solidifying the world building in your mind, you know.
And it sounds like it does help build on your aesthetic that you feel for the world. It doesn't have to be of physical, practical value, or I should say, it shouldn't have to have a story element or a plot element that they have to pick up on. Sometimes it is actually just about building the sense of the world in there. And there's a certain pride you can take in crafting the map, I believe. I know I find that when I'm doing maps as well.
Yeah, no, that's it. You get to show off something cool as well, because, you know, players might not always necessarily. I know that players do not understand everything that goes into game mastering. We're hopefully demystifying that with all of the ongoing conversations that we're having around that. But it definitely shows a level of preparedness, a level of commitment. Because if we didn't commit to this particular map from when we started 3 hours ago on the stream.
No.
But it has taken us several hours to kind of fuddle our way through with a more focused purpose and specific goal in mind. You can craft something relatively fantastic relatively quickly, using these softwares, especially something like Dungeon Alchemist, where the lighting and the assets look really cool right out of the gate. I'm seeing things on like the Facebook pages and stuff that are just freaking mind-blowing. I don't know where these people are getting some of their ideas and where they're engineering these things from. I feel like there's a lot of assets that I don't know where they're getting these things. But also just for your sake and for like visualizing, you know, if you're running a dungeon, like if I ran Curse of Strahd and all I read was all the descriptions from K1 to K88, I think that's how many different sections of it there are. You can't possibly know. Like, I think the easiest way to actually run that is Theater of the Mind, where you know where the players are in each room, but you have to have a reference map. And that's also really useful because, like we discussed, there's going to be a flow of where they approach, how they go places, why do they go there, what's the reason. So if we want them to come in through the flooded chamber, through the library, we're going to make it easy for them to access the dining area. Then they might try and break into the bed chamber that's behind an obviously locked door. The minions room holds the key to where they need to go. So whether they go to the bedroom or not doesn't matter. But now they go, right, we now know that we're looking for a hidden door. We're looking for a false wall. And so does that lead them through storage? And eventually into the laboratory, or are they going to come into the flooded room, immediately go, oh, I'm a rogue, I'll look for hidden walls and shit. Cool. Then they do that, but that doesn't matter. You can always improvise, adapt, and overcome.
That's right. That's really great. Thanks, man. Thanks for going through this over the last few hours and just sharing your process too. It's great from me because I've got similar things I do, slightly different processes also because I use a different online tool with Incarnate. But Dungeon Draft looks really awesome to use, and it's just nice to see what goes into making maps here, because I mean I love maps. I love drawing maps, pencil and paper personally. So there is that side of it, but to have something like this as a tool, thanks for sharing your love of it too, because it's just, you can see how very valuable it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if anybody wants to like get started with this, something I have used for pretty much ever since 5th edition came out is a Chessex product. They make dice, but they also make the vinyl battle mats that they make. You can get a basic square one, and you can get the mega mat, and I think they make the Mondo mat, which is gigantic. I've had my mega mat for so long. I gave away my mini mat, my square one,
Mhm.
when I got my bigger one because I just wanted someone else to have it. And now they are vinyl maps. They are not dry erase. Do not use normal whiteboard markers on them. Do not use permanent markers. I use the Crayola Ultra Washables, and they are the thick
Yeah.
kind, not the thin kind. It's very specific, but that's what I actually love to go and make maps on for my in-person games, because as much as I could put a huge amount of effort into this and print it off, like I said, it's not necessarily going to be like picked up. Like the details and everything aren't going to be there when
Yeah.
I draw something out on these maps. I currently,
Mm.
well, what I last drew was about 6 or 7 floors of a Nautiloid, which is a Mind Flayer ship. So I
Yeah.
took the time to do each one of those in a different color so that they could see what was where, and all I did was draw out all the rooms. And
Mm.
then they went through, suspended their disbelief in terms of, suspended their awareness in terms of what was actually there and content wise, and they just went through and went, okay, well, these
Mm.
look like such and such. I'm not going to assume, but it serves the purpose for them crawling through the dungeon, and then I can say what's in each floor, what's in each room when they come across it, and I don't have to draw out all of the horrific things that Illithids do. But in this, I
Yeah.
could have a giant glass jar full of brains. In Dungeon Rock, I could make that happen. It would look great, but I'm not going to bother drawing that. So there's I
Mm.
like being able to quickly always have that with me. I can always draw a battle map that looks great right there at the
Mm.
table. I can draw ahead of time, as well. So that is actually my go-to. But man, when I get into this digital
Mm.
tool, I honestly say I will go in just for fun. I tried to make like a jet
Mm.
fighter sci-fi ship when I got all the sci-fi assets. And
Mm.
then obviously what I ended up making with that big spaceship. So yeah, it is just fun. And guess what?
And
If
it's
you're
fun.
listening to this and you don't play D&D or any role-playing games, go make maps if you want to, because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna stop you, and it's awesome fun.
Oh, it's an awesome fun craft to have. And it is a bit meditative when you're getting into it. You can get into
Oh
a
yeah,
real rhythm and just drift off into just making maps, which is not a
yeah.
bad thing, I guess.
Put
That's
some
all
good
good.
music on, put a podcast on, good TV show. That's what I do, because I've kind of noticed while trying to have a coherent conversation with you and doing all of this, I've been a little bit distracted, but gladly so, because it's nice to think about the process. But generally, I will just sit here for a good chunk of time and just
Mm.
completely immerse myself into it. And
Mm.
then just flip back and forth between different rooms as soon as I grab something that looks good in another room, and flip over there and add the
That's
lighting
part of
here
the
and
fun.
tweak that. Yeah, yeah,
Part
you
of the
can
fun
always
of the
polish it. Yeah,
inspiration exploration. Thanks again. Thanks again
yeah,
to our chat for everyone being involved too.
yeah,
OMG, good to see you there, Thea, as well. We missed you here today, but we
yeah,
saw you were here in spirit, which was really
yeah.
cool. And got
Thank
your
you.
and guys, thank you. We'll be back. That's our big workshop, second cozy workshop we've done. Thanks for leading it, Jared. It's been
Thanks for
awesome.
helping.
Pleasure. We'll do more. We'll have more of these in future. At this point, we'll be back this Thursday with our regular routine Thursday night sessions that we have, and we look forward to seeing you guys there. In the meantime, stay creative, everybody. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll
Yeah,
catch you back again. Keep the conversation going.
yeah. Stay well. See you guys real soon. Bye.
Awesome, guys. Take care. See ya.